how I'm making the tier list up. I didn't actually get a lot of assets that I wanted to, but I got the bare minimum to make a tier list, basically. But we're gonna let this sit here for about 30 seconds just to make sure that, you know, the stream's gonna start off okay. I might pull this up later. Actually, I should set this up for like a minute, but hey, well, let's make sure that things are okay. So, without further ado, yeah, let's get the stream started. Again, these are the guidelines we're working with. I might as well just say them out loud as well. So, yeah, base vanilla game. So we're assuming version 1.01 because 1.02 has bugs and stuff and is not complete and not available to the public at large unless you have the game on Steam. And yeah, just to say, this is not a hard extensive list of rulings. So already we're working based off a very specific set of details that we're going through runs, as we're going through runs. For example, this is a vacuum of Harbinger quick play runs with randomized settings. So what I mean by a vacuum, for those who are not familiar with the term, it means that when you're doing, say, a near infinite amount of runs, where in this stream do I think characters exist on a tier list? And I'll put details on the tiers because I figured that would probably be the smarter option. So for hitting quick play, randomized settings meaning, aside from sudden death, which is always going to be set on, just to make it, basically, to make the run harder. But you set random timelines, which what happens there is that when you set random timelines on your settings, the game makes every mystery a random timeline. So if you have Scissors, Vigil, and Festival in your run, Scissors could be timeline A, but Festival could be timeline B, and then Vigil could be, well, doesn't matter which timeline, but you get the point. It could be A or B after the first two are different timelines as well. That also means with the randomized settings, for the main menu, randomized settings also equals an equal chance of Old Gods backstory combinations, and we'll include, actually, for theory's sake, let's include, let me put something else here. So, for theory's sake, include Yumiko and Commoner backstory. Because then we're also using about 2 custom characters, and there'll be a little bonus. I think Future Jordan should put timestamps, but the reason why I'm saying this is because Yumiko and Commoner are not included when you hit quick play, but for argument's sake, we'll add them into the tier list. I mean, we're going to be doing Yumiko, and then we'll think about Commoner. I haven't gotten that many Commoner runs under my belt just by nature of how much I've played comparatively, because I need to set things, but I should actually do another video stream at some point about either or both of these two. But moving down the list, all perks, character perks randomized, so assume there's a 50-50 chance when you hit quick play if you set... I think this is random, but either way, there's a 50% chance you have all perks unlocked for a character or character perks specifically only. For example, if you hit quick play and you get character perks Koji, you'll see perks like deduction and then the general perks improvise, fast hands. But if you have all perks, when you Koji levels up, you could get quick thinking, adrenaline, and fast swimmer as your possible picks. And then one more down here. If there's something I'm forgetting, please let me know. But normal random item stats, yeah, that's also randomized settings. For those who don't know, quickly, most items have a base value that they exist with. But if you set random item stats, this can fluctuate somewhat, but can still make a difference because of a weapon that has a base damage of 3 having a base damage of 4, or a weapon that has a base damage of 5 going down to 4 can change your run quite a bit, in my opinion, anyway. But as you move on to our the other main guidelines, so we pick or assume favored consistent sublocations for characters. So if you like picking, I like picking vending machines, but that's usually not as a consistent pick as, say, a cult shop or even dog shop. But it is a flex side pick that you can pick, so that's not really the best example. Other examples include possible selections of a legal den or hardware store at the seaside location. But really, for example, if you're playing as Moriko, there's not really a reason to play hardware store unless you're doing chainsaw. But I would say that's less consistent from what I know and have seen. But again, we're assuming basically like you're picking the best step locations. But another, not cadaver, but a nuance of this is that you're not always picking. What am I trying to say? A legal den when you have ward, because there's no way you can know you have ward before you pick the before you pick the sub locations. Let me cough. But yes, also Future Jordan should timestamp this as well. Current bugs and exploits allowed. Handcuff tech infinite, pseudo-infinites, and double stamina taken, but I don't know how likely it is to go for infinites. I don't try to go for them a lot of the time, but let's assume you have these, and these are pretty much I win buttons, but you're not always guaranteed an infinite unless there is a infinite that you can set up that's easy to get, but please let me know otherwise. And then no or almost no human error mistakes, so we're like, I forget the second check of the lighthouse a lot for a second encounter. You remember all events, but let's say you maybe mess up 1 or 2 events. That's not usually going to, or that shouldn't really change the overall tier of a character, in my opinion, based on this set of guidelines. Again, we're not looking at endless mode. We're not looking at custom mysteries or a set of custom mysteries or characters. We're looking at the base game, and then you're never missing handcuff tech. Events succeed or fail based on average RNG relative to base stats and growth. For example, if you start with a stat of, say, 3 strength, then you're expected to kind of fail 25% or 20% of all of your strength checks, but that changes based on where you are in the run, because if you build into strength, so on and so forth. So this is not the biggest... this is not going to be the biggest kind of way I decide a character goes into a tier or not, but again, just to explain. But yeah, with that said, we should be able to get to the tier list now. I've already set it up. As a bonus, I'll be doing my custom characters just for giggles. I would like to do a lot more custom characters, but I haven't played a lot of them to near the extent. I've still played Yumiko more than any custom character. Let's just say that much. But as we move to the tier list here, yeah, let's see what happens. So at the very beginning here, we'll do a little quick 1-minute tier movement here. So Kiria B. Oh, I was gonna set the things, but Kiria B, Haru, Summaries, or actually, I think they're all based on how I look at it. Because a little quick thing here is that I usually look at characters in the world of horror. While they do have their own, like some of them do have definite advantages over others, in my opinion, on Harbinger as well, Harbinger difficulty. Even though the stream title is that. The game, playing the game kind of is the other big part of it. Like you can do as good as you can, but while your character does affect a lot of how your run will play out, at the same time, yeah, your character will affect a lot of how the run plays out. At the same time, your general knowledge of the game and doing things properly will help things as well. So this is kind of just the if you wanted me to make a tier list in about a minute, this is what I do. But I'll go over each character one by one, starting with, I guess we'll go from left to right and then work out from there. But let me just change these first. So these characters have about a 99%. I had an actual thing, but let's just do this for the moment. So 90%, 80% win rate. And then as we go down, these are 80. Well, we'll never set it to 100% because there's RNG can always just say, nah, you lose, in essence. Yeah, that's all I can really say for that. But let's just continue moving onward. I like to make these statements look as crisp as possible, but I guess we'll find out if it's really if I really do it that way. These are 80 to 70%. Again, these tiers are gonna be kind of skirting the threshold of how much the tier changes and how much it doesn't sometimes. But we'll see. Again, we'll see. So and this one should be about 60% to 50%, and then D will be everything below. But no one's really gonna go there because I think so the way this works out is that I personally do think that each character has at least at minimum even just 60% win rate based on what the tiers say right here. So let me actually do this because otherwise I can't see the X. So yeah, and now we go into actual tier list. We'll briefly glance over every character, and if you have any comments or questions, you can say so either in the comment section if this is a VOD or otherwise. I don't think I have a certain setting on, but I'll explain each character pretty much briefly. I'll think about it a bit more if I do. The game is running in the background, which is why you hear the BGM, but just in case I need to check something, I have set things the way they are. So, Aiko, pretty self-explanatory, has a passive that makes you faster in combat. Combat is a pretty huge part of World of Horror. You're probably going to fight at least a few enemies at bare minimum, but really, if you're playing on Harbinger and you can't reroll mysteries, it's... did I mention that in the guidelines, by the way? Yeah, so you can't reroll mysteries, so if you get Metamorphosis and Nakamanto, or anything, most characters suffer. They don't really have They have a lot of indirect combat advantages, but Aiko has a direct one. Aiko also has the plush toy, which lowers damage by 1. Old Gods Forbid, you also have Kana, so you're pretty much taking no damage while dealing 4 kicks minimum, or 2 prep attacks with most weapons, which 3 shots a lot of enemies, which is a lot more that can be said than other characters, which may have to gamble on the fact. So, and then Aiko has perks Fast Swimmer. Her stats aren't bad, which is another advantage over the other 2 in her tier. And then, yeah, her perks aren't bad. Fast Swimmer is very good. Hot Bath is okay. Discipline is okay. I almost said Disciple. Discipline is okay, and I think she has one more. If she doesn't, that's even better, funny enough, because the more perks you have, if you're fishing for one specific perk, it's harder to get that perk among the, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, if you have 3 perks, then you have to roll out of 8 perks. So that's a 50-50 shot of getting the perk you want if you're trying to reroll let's see, I think 3 or 4 times in a level up. The numbers are wonky, but pretty much it's near 50-50 if you're fishing for 1. But if you have 2 or 3 okay-ish perks at least, like Aiko does, you can take any of them. You do want Fast Swimmer, but Aiko already has innate time action speed, which is very good. So I think, yeah, about 3 to 5 minutes. I'll try to be about 3 to 5 minutes per character as I crack a pressure point on my body. But we'll move on. Aika, self-explanatory as well. Also, keep in note that this tier list is made based off kind of more objective. Maybe I'll make a subjective one right after this, a subjective tier list. But this is more for, like, the average play. Again, based on my own guidelines. Not, even though making a tier list in itself is subjective, we're trying to be kind of as objective as possible. But there's only so much I know. I haven't even played the other half of the cast as much as I have. But moving on to Aika. Aika, if you get character-specific perks, great. If you don't, it can be a bit troublesome, but I've seen people not have as much trouble anyway, and Aika with all perks hurts a lot less than Toshiaki with all perks, in my opinion anyway. Even though Aika has, -3, only 3 luck, which, it is what it is, but that's not so bad because Aika still has at least a way to remove curses, which, while she is getting 2 curses per all perk run, so in 50% of runs, you get all perks. I would normally put her below, but she still has a lot more that she can do with her Onyx Medallion, as opposed to Toshiaki, who, yeah, he does have the book strap, but if you have run all perks as Toshiaki, you have Doom as well, but oftentimes you're experiencing a lot more trouble than Aika, who can at least, recover somewhat. Now, if they're both on Zictas, that's why they're definitely under Aiko, but in my mind's mind, something an instinct is telling me to put Aika above Toshiaki, even though actually no, because if Aika's on all perks, Toshiaki's also suffering for being on all perks. For those who don't know, really quickly for about 10 seconds, if you get an all perks run as either of these 2 characters, you can't get any of their perks, I'm pretty sure. Toshiaki definitely, but Aika as well. But Aika, like I said, suffers less than Toshiaki, because Toshiaki's stats are pretty abysmal. Relative to Aika's. Toshiaki's dies to Frostbite, that's a little minus on his side. And then 2, this is kind of Toshiaki and Aika, by the way, but I still say even with this, they have a very, very high win rate, because again, there's a lot of things in games that, in the game that you can do to prevent yourself from dying. Whereas Toshiaki, yeah, his stats are so low that you can get 2 stats of 100 and die. When you run to Frostbite Land, you die. You get 2 bad dexterity curses, you die. Same thing for Aika, but Aika, the Frostbite really, not dying to Frostbite immediately really, really helps. Though on Zectas, they do suffer. Still, though, they're not as bad because Toshiaki has -50% Doom, and Aika can remove curses. That might not sound like a lot, but it actually is, at least in my experience. So that's where my subjective experience is going to come in. But otherwise, on a character-specific run, I didn't even talk about Aika's strongest point. Blood Mania, but really any of our other 2 perks are very good as well. Even though curses have gotten a lot more dangerous, the effect that Blood Mania gives to you, on top of Eldritch Possession allowing you to pass so many events, is why Aika still is above Toshiaki, objectively in my opinion. So then, as we move on to Toshiaki, really generally, yeah, you have 50%. You have a 50% Doom decrease for the entire run. Not immediately, but if you assume that much, then it's great with character-specific perks. Unfortunately, unlike Aika, he only really has 1, maybe 2 usable perks, but really only 1. And that one, in general, is also, it is very, very good if you use it in the more consistent way. It's Thought Flash. You trade You use 15 experience to lower Doom by 3, and so basically you can just play the game at level 2 and move onward. You can level up to 3 if you want, maybe get quick thinking, but most of the time you're just getting Thought Flash. If you try to work with his other perks, you kind of undermine the Doom's management that you can have, especially on Harbinger difficulty, where Doom is a much more precious resource. The reason why I say that is because on Harbinger, for those who don't know, Doom doesn't decrease at the end of every mystery. True Believer only decreases it by 1, but that's still a lot more than what you would normally get, which is why Toshiaki is in S tier, because once you know the game a bit more, even though you do require game knowledge to play Toshiaki, when you know the events, you can avoid very bad outcomes that you can avoid, but you can make use of the 50% Doom that you have, resting in someone else. Numerically, I do believe that a lot of things that the game gives you instead of Toshiaki's perks are better spent, is Doom's better spent than his perks, funny enough. But maybe I'm wrong, please let me know. But after that, we move into A tier. Moriko can arguably be an S as well, but again, I don't have as much Moriko experience under my belt, so I say at least, at minimum, she's probably at 80% win rate, if even that. The reason why, I think I've actually moved these tier lists down, or these details down. I used to want to say S tier is 90% or above, but because the commoner's backstory exists, that does account for like 5 to 8% of your run, so that's why I've widened kind of the gap in some of these tiers. But moving on to Moriko, then. Again, please let me know if you see any changes. Feel free to try and persuade me otherwise. I wouldn't proclaim to be the best at World of Horror, so there's a lot that I don't know. Again, for Moriko specifically, Moriko's definitely up there. Again, in my opinion, definitely top 5. Probably even over Toshiaki in some people's opinions, but at minimum 80% win rate, A tier, top of A tier. She starts with a weapon. She has perks that help use that weapon, even if you don't want to use that weapon. Armor. Are these win rates all considered to be on Harbinger? Yes, I went over the guidelines at the very beginning, but it's a very long guideline list, so basically yes. So anyone else, feel free to ask me questions about the guidelines that I'm using for this tier list as well. But this is all based on Harbinger. That's why in these character portraits, you'll see the Harbinger splash behind them. So, even on Harbinger, Moriko, yeah. And you'll notice a trend, at least for good characters, is that they start with a weapon, usually. There aren't very many weapons that you start out with and end up to be worse, because the main reason for that, as we're going over the tier list generically here, if you're new to this channel or this is the first video you watch from me, the reason why characters with weapons are normally very good is because if you don't start off with a weapon in Harbinger, you usually want a weapon, because kicks at base are not that great. If you get a damage increase, sure, but for example, if you get Ath and you immediately get the damage spell, I think the damage spell ritual, or is it either the damage spell increase or a damage decrease ritual, you can run kicks somewhat reliably. Depends on your strength value after that, but you get the point. Otherwise, you're usually running a weapon, and being able to deal 4 to 8 damage per turn somewhat reliably, or at certain, is very good. Moriko fits that bill, along with being able to fire her personalized weapon that you can give to custom characters, but we're talking about base game. And then deft handling makes, or not deft handling. Yeah, deft handling makes her faster. I almost said CQC training. That's Haru perk. That's a Haru perk. She gets extra ammo if you have more bosses that you want to shoot, or just an enemy you want to get rid of. And then Daddy's Girl, very good stamina healing perk. Obviously no effect on Eldritch Parasite, but backstories, while they aren't insignificant, they do provide a good amount of reason why your win rate can increase or decrease somewhat drastically. But yeah, Moriko stuff. And then her stats are not bad either. Strength is a little low, but 5 is pretty okay still, because 5 is the threshold for being able to brace into a guaranteed kick if you need it. So not much more to say there on Moriko. Not a lot of arguments either. Definitely top 5. Might even be top 3 in some people's tier lists. I say top, but I think these 3 characters still perform better. In another way, again, even though I'm trying to be objective, it's still subjective in the way that I'm looking at this tier list and going, who would I rather play over another character? That's kind of what I'm saying. But again, I don't know as much Moriko. Moving on to Mimi. Same reason, starts with a weapon, although her stats are not as great, and her perks are might seem out there. It's actually not so much. I know people sometimes use other knowledge weapons as Mimi. I personally don't, because I feel the Doom that you save, for at least for me, is a lot better. So subjective statement there. But What I mean by that is Mimi has Anatomy class, increased damage against human enemies. Mimi can immediately do prep attack with Scalpel right off the bat, unless you're on random item stats, which can make a difference. Random item stats and normal item stats, let's assume it's 50-50. But even in that case, again, you do have the choice of just still running the Scalpel or getting another weapon, which is why she's definitely under Moriko, and could be under Haru, but I'm going to put her above Haru because it's the guaranteed weapon, and her perks are also not bad. Her stat spread is also, 5 strength is usually what I'm looking at in terms of where I want your stats to be, but any other weapon stat that is at 6 or 7, usually 7, is another plus on the tier list. But then Mimi overall has a first aid is the other one. While she starts with less max reason, that's not as much of a downside as you think, at least less so in my opinion than, definitely less than starting with a weapon. And the other part of that is that you're usually not worried about having less than 13 max reason or stamina anyway. There is kind of a threshold, it depends on your comfort level, but from what I've seen and what I've experienced, mostly what I've seen though, is that even being at max 8 or 7 max stamina and reason is not so bad. Now that might result in some lighthouse problems, but those moments come few and far between, so that's why Mimi has 10 max reason on Harbinger. It's not so bad. And the weapon, starting off with the weapon, as I said, combat is quite important, on top of the stats you roll. Now, moving on to a character I know a lot more than every other character, really, is Haru. So Haru got buffed over, 40 years. So he went from being pretty much like even down here, really, like I'm not even joking, I'm not exaggerating here, to being up here, definitely around a 75% win rate at minimum, but probably closer to 80% as well, along with Mimi and Moriko, because of now having Hard Knock, now having the vending machines, and then there's one more thing. Oh, his personal item. So, for those who don't know what each of these things do, vending machines only cost 1 Doom, as opposed to the Legal Den, which is 3% Doom for entering, and not even being guaranteed cigarettes, and then the Dog Shop, which is 4 Doom, which is not guaranteed to drop cigarettes either. So vending machines is, I think, 2 Doom now? I think it used to cost 1 Doom, but it got nerfed, quote-unquote. Well, I say quote-unquote. It had got nerfed to 2 Doom. Correct me if I'm wrong, but still, for 2 Doom, if you have enough funds, you can buy another guaranteed pack of cigarettes, because in the vending machines, there's only 4 slots. This indirectly greatly buffs Haru, because Haru now has a specific perk for cigarettes, or that you can give to custom characters, called Hard Knock, which, while you're under the effect of Nicotine Rush, which is already a positive buff in your favor, you get an extra point of damage on top of that on all attacks, except for, I think, fire and ally attack. But that, like, it's pretty good. When you smoke a pack of cigarettes as Haru, you immediately get access to, I think, 4 kicks at 3 damage. So yeah, and then after that is Hard Knock, like I said, self perk, that self innate passive that he starts with, that greatly improves the effect of smoking cigarettes and keeping cigarettes and Nicotine Rush effect active. And then after that, he has the cigarette case, which essentially gives you 15% more cigarettes based on when you have it equipped, as long as you have it equipped, because the effect of cigarette case is that it has a chance of not using a cigarette at a 15% chance per investigation. Add on top of that any efficient uses that you have for these cigarettes, like you take Recluse first for whatever reason, but you don't smoke cigarettes until the end, and you get a lot of mileage out of 2 packs of cigarettes. On top of that, his character-specific perks are also not bad. The best one of them is one of the top 3 to 5 perks in the game, Core Strength, which just straight up adds a point of damage to all of your attacks, kicks, attacks, strong attacks. So that's that. But then the other ones are not, they're eh. So one of them is Yakuza card, opens up another slot in shops, and allows you to sell items that you normally wouldn't be able to sell. I don't really find anyone, including myself, using this. I'd rather use Irizumi, which decreases the amount of the price of items by 1. Combating price hike, but just in general, that perk alone, Irizumi, is normally okay to pick up after Core Strength. It's not the greatest perk, but it's also not bad, because you probably might be shopping one more time, and that 1 fund can mean the difference between running into out of funds or other bad things. But in general, Haru pretty good. Strength being at 7 also allows him to use the better weapons of the game, which are normally strength weapons. In my opinion, at least, that's a more subjective statement, because I've not run the numbers. But Monkey Wrench, Carpenter Hammer, and I think there's one more. Even without that, being able to brace, with 7 or 8 strength, you can brace into a lot of comfortable attack patterns that are near guaranteed or just guaranteed. And Haru being in with Nicotine Rush buff, or in if we rewind back to Aiko, having faster action speed on offensive actions, allows you to brace into guaranteed attacks for a lot of weapons, which is very, very good. To kind of tangent a little bit, but it is closely related. The reason why brace is so valued in Harbinger is because a lot of enemies get buffed to 3 damage immediately on Harbinger, and bracing saves you a lot more damage on damage taken than if you would just be go all out. But it depends on the situation. That's why it's not the biggest plus or advantage to have, but it's also not a negative. If for no other reason than just if you look at any of my videos, I brace a lot, and strength directly affects the time unit cost of brace, and then Haru and by extension Aiko, and by extension Aika and Toshiaki have ways to increase their action speed, which allows them to brace more comfortably into turns where you can do a lot of damage. But anyway, moving on, I think Kyrie actually might be lower. Yeah, she's definitely, so let me switch these around. Let's actually go here. I'll talk about Kyrie, I might as well, because we're going left to right pretty much. But Kyrie is definitely under, in my opinion, Koji Mizuki, but I'll get to that when I get to them. As for Kyrie herself, spells are kind of big RNG. It's not as bad as, you're not trying to hit a jackpot when you're rolling spells in general, if we're talking about Kyrie in general. And the biggest part of this is the initial spell you get, because Kyrie starts off with the spell learned, but there are only about 7 to 10 spells that you're really going to use, and only a couple of those are really breadwinners in terms of you're always going to use them somewhere. Off the bat, those spells are Ghostly Spear, Mind Drain, Protective Carvings. If we're talking about spells that you get them immediately, I thought there was a damage spell, but maybe I'm going crazy. The spell that increases strength, the spell that increases knowledge if you'd like to run knowledge, and then there are a few other spells on top of that. Expel Evil, maybe Midasu Touch, but that's kind of, I'll throw that into the spells you don't use as much. So like I said, about 7 to 10 spells that you can use reliably, but you have to hit the jackpot because there are about 30 spells. So if that wasn't enough, then you have Kyrie's perks, which again, I think most of them aren't, or the majority of them aren't bad. They're just still conditional, and they're usually tied to spells. To work off the top of my head, you have Arcane Grasp, which gives you 2 spell slots. You're usually not going to run into an issue with that because there aren't enough spells to learn and keep to use that you'll ever run into the limit. But maybe you do, but those, like, I don't think I've ever even done, maybe I've done it once or twice in 4 years of playing World of Horror, so that's why that's kind of at the bottom of the list. Then there is Second Sight. I think Second Sight. Kyrie has Second Sight. Correct me if I'm wrong. Second Sight, pretty useful. A lot of bosses in the game are Eldritch type enemies. And then Ghost type enemies, I think Sever is where the damage increase comes. So, but mostly for bosses, for bossing and bosses, Second Sight is pretty good. There's one that heals you for an injury also. Can't just roll the History Club if you don't get a good one. Can't you just hold if you don't get a good run already? Yes, but that's a use. A rolling History Club, as I've calculated, is about 50-50 at about 5 to 8 rerolls, let's assume that much. And that 5 to 8 Doom can mean the difference between life and death. So, while that is useful, and like I said, those are more consistent strategies to use. History Club is not as consistent, but it is still consistent, in my opinion, at least. So, again, but then you're also thinking about if you run an all-perks run, because assuming there's a 50% chance to get an all-perks run or a character-specific perk run, that going into the History Club, I think, is worth less. It depends on your character, actually. But for most characters, if you want to use their perks, and mainly Toshiaki and Ayaka, you want to be on a character-specific perk run to visit the History Club. If you visit the History Club on an all-perk run as either of these 2 characters, you're probably just fishing for Fast Swimmer, Adrenaline, and or Core Strength. There are a couple more that you can use, but for 10% Doom for Toshiaki and 15% Doom for Ayaka, then yeah, it can be not as worth. They can be worth not as much. But that's why I said these win rates are a lot higher, because like you just said, you can use strategies that apply to every character, like the History Club, like Schoolyard if you like recruiting students later. But I don't know how consistent that strategy is. History Club, in my opinion, I think it is very impactful, but it's not like the end all be all, in my opinion anyway. Maybe it is for you. Unfortunately, it's not for me. But going back to Kyrie, then you have, I think Second Sight, Arcane Grass, there is Ghost Connection, which grants you a spell at the end of every mystery, but if you had this at the beginning of the run, then it would be a lot better, if for no other reason than reason healing. But because it's not, again, you're still rolling a jackpot. That means she's still better than a lot of the characters below her, but the characters above her have things that just affect them either at the beginning of the run or are good to have immediately when you grab them. And then our last perk, Self-Therapy, which synergizes with Ghost Connection, but on its own, you're probably picking up usually about a spell or another extra spell or two during the run. So that's an extra 4 reason healing that you get per level up, as opposed to 1 level up and you heal reason for 2. So it's not bad, but it's not great either. That's why I say Kyrie is kind of in the middle. Perfectly fine for the very first character you have, but again, if you're immediately going to Harbinger difficulty, and you don't have the Occult Shop unlocked, we're assuming you have everything unlocked too, that's right. That's another guideline I forgot to put, but that kind of is, I think that's kind of implied based on the characters you see on screen. But yeah, if you have, you have Occult Shop, if you immediately play Harbinger as Kyrie, but you can also use Strength Weapons as well, it's not bad. You can also try to pick up the Army Knife, but I wouldn't suggest that. So really, you're looking at Occult Shop, and Occult Shop, there's not a bad chance that you don't see any weapons and you have to reroll, which again, like I said, if I'm going to complain about 5 to 8% dooms of reroll in History Club, I have to therefore complain about, let's assume, even just 1 reroll at the Occult Shop, but really 2, depending on your RNG. But that's not average. If you reroll once, you'll probably see a weapon, so we'll just say 3 doom on top of the 4 doom you spend for entering the Occult Shop. So yeah, moving on from left to right, from Haru, we go to Koji. I think Koji is above Mizuki and Kyrie. Koji immediately starts off with the camera, which is heavily buffed in his favor. I think the camera overall was buffed, but Koji starts with the camera, so he immediately gets to benefit from equipping it, getting an extra point of knowledge. So this 6 knowledge here, you see at the little over here, is not including his camera, so he actually has 7 knowledge. So you can run Occult Shop as well, but he can also run Hardware Store and or the Illegal Den for the Army Knife because he has 7 perception. And that's another plus over Kyrie that he has. His perks may not be the greatest, but if you're already rolling gotchas on Kyrie for spells, Koji's perks are a bit more normalized. As we get into, he doesn't have any other really passives unless I'm forgetting something, but excuse me, we'll go over his perks. So, also, you'll know I may not talk about all perks as much. There are a few characters where it matters, but for all perks, most characters, it's pretty much near the same. And if all perks were a worse setting, every character would kind of go down a bit, but it's not that bad because, like I said, you could get Adrenaline, Fast Swimmer, and Core Strength. Those are the 3 top examples I come up with, but for good reason. But anywho, back to Koji. So Koji's perks, Improvise, allows you to throw things. If you know what you're doing in the game, in my opinion, I think throwing items can be very, very helpful. Old gods forbid you run into Dullness and Burning Man in your favor. That allows you to get a lot more damage with Improvise, but I don't often see that, which was why when we go into the next perk, Fast Hands, which actually synergizes with Improvise, it's not the greatest plus, but it's still something nice to have in case you can fit in Improvise for whatever reason in. You're not normally doing that, but those are okay perks to get if there's nothing else better. Sadly enough, I think Quick Thinking is still the better of those 2 perks, which is why, yeah. But even if you have a good perk though, as we get into Mizuki later on, I think you'll at least kind of try to see where I'm coming from with Koji's, or with perks in general. I forgot what I was going to say specifically. Anywho, there's another perk I forgot. Oh, Deduction. Deduction and Reporter's Bag, but we'll go over Reporter's Bag first because it's if we're working off kind of meh perks, I think Reporter's Bag is actually not the most useless, but it's down there with Fast Hands, because while the extra inventory space is much, appreciated, and it does synergize, funny enough, with Fast Hands and Improvise, because the more items you have in your inventory is essentially more damage, but that's assuming you have enough items to throw. Same thing for Fast Hands, you can get more items in the same encounter, and then throw either one, if you need that extra point of damage. That's something that's very complicated to do, but we're assuming you can do something like that. What I mean by this is, say there's an enemy with 4 HP left, but you're doing an action sequence that, for whatever reason, that uses Improvise. So you have Fast Hands and... oh my god, I forgot. Reporter's Bag as Koji, and you have like 3 item slots. This is a very nuanced situation, which is why it's not as great, but it's important to talk about. You have A 4 or 5 HP enemy left, you do a kick into an improvise, and then when you improvise with fast hands, you pick up either a brick or a broken bottle, or sorry, empty bottle, along with a broken bottle or a branch. So you hit improvise, you immediately go to the item to throw, as the action sequence moves left to right. Then you throw that empty bottle or brick, and the enemy dies. But you get also an extra branch and or a broken bottle from that. That's again, this is a very I've not run into a situation like this, I don't think. And if I have, again, this kind of thing to do, I wouldn't normally rely on myself. But for assuming the player is fast enough in real life to do this, it's a small plus that Koji has with Reporter's Bag. But anywho, moving on to, I think, Koji's arguably at least most consistent perk, Deduction. You have to get it early on, usually, but even later in the run, that extra 20 experience can help out. So, again, for those who don't know, Deduction gives you basically 20 experience at the end of every mystery after you get it. So, that can be the difference between leveling up before the end or leveling up even twice, depending on how greedy you get for experience. So Koji things. But he's definitely in the middle because I don't think he doesn't start off with a weapon. He starts off with the camera. Also, camera flash. That's right. Sorry. Starting off with the camera allows him to have more accuracy because when you enter an encounter with the camera equipped, you immediately do the camera. You don't get to dodge, but you lower the enemy's power by 10. Specifically, is what happens, which is an extra 10% accuracy you get unless you're already doing prep attack. So while it may not seem like it's a lot, I think it has a bit more of an effect than some people think, but it's not the biggest modifier as opposed to Haru smoking cigarettes and getting prep attack. Mimi immediately getting prep attack with a scalpel. Moriko starting off with an old shotgun, so on and so forth. But he's definitely up there over Kyrie, and soon as we'll talk about Mizuki, because I think he's the bit more, funny enough, normalized character, but Kyrie is also another normalized character in a different way. However, as we move on to Mizuki, the reason why Mizuki is above Kyrie is that still in a lot of runs, especially if you're playing correctly, I don't, but if you play correctly, and by that I mean mostly you're going into events knowing what to do here and there, and knowing what risks to take, or taking, calculated risks, I think Mizuki usually works better than Kyrie, even on all perks, because she starts mainly with 7 Charisma. Now, you haven't heard me talk about Old Gods yet, but definitely Mizuki is a character that suffers from the gods like Zektast and Azal. Zektast because the nerf to stats and therefore Charisma is pretty bad, but she has fame to make up for it if you can get it. And then for Azal, if you play Mizuki with her recently changed or added on ally attack, which was given to us in 1.0, I think 1.0, then you're doing a lot better, but it costs a lot of Doom to run that strategy. Still, though, that doesn't mean you can't just run a weapon as Mizuki, but you have to buy one, which puts her in this kind of below characters that have weapons or don't need weapons to play. So, Toshiaki doesn't have a weapon either, but he has... You have something to counteract the needing to get a weapon immediately. Which in Mizuki's case she has, but it still costs Doom. In fact, it usually costs more Doom than getting a weapon. But because her stats are so low, save for Charisma, you now want to run Ally Attack. For those who don't know, we'll go into it for about 30 seconds. There's an action in the game called Ally Attack. It deals 2 times the number of allies you have, minus 2 at a 50% chance. So if you have 7 allies, you do 14 damage, or 12 per ally attack, and you can normally fit 1 of these guaranteed, which is pretty much you have a katana with you at the start, because what you do as Mizuki is you start off with an ally, you grab 2 school students, so that's 3 allies, and then you go into the illegal den and grab 3 allies. That costs about 20% Doom to do. We'll say 23%. But you have 6 allies immediately, and if you have eels, if you have painting maybe, you can grab another ally if you run to an event. But that usually you have about 6 allies, so you deal guaranteed 10 to 12 damage per turn. Definitely guaranteed, because you can add in a kick usually. It may not be guaranteed, but usually you can. And then after that, as you go into Mizuki's perks, or just leveling up in general, once you hit the threshold of 8 Charisma, or increase her Charisma by 1 in any way, you have 8 Charisma, which allows you to do 2 ally attacks. This might not work for every enemy, but for low power enemies, you can get a reliable 20-ish damage on most enemies, which one-shots a lot of them early on in the game. Or even into Mysteries 3 and maybe 4. But as we move into Mizuki's perks, Fame. You're looking for Fame. Fame increases your overall speed, action speed, based on each ally you have. And when you have even just 5 or 6 allies, you can all do a lot of magical things. You can do prep attack, very guaranteed. Prep attack, prep strong even. You can do prep ally attack if you're running ally attack, so on and so forth. But if you're running ally attack, usually you're doing, prep ally attack, which gets you that juicy 20 damage. Or you can gamble on hitting 3 out of 4 ally attacks, which nets you a juicy 30 damage guaranteed. It's pretty good. But the cost here is that your doom is very, very high for getting the allies that you need to get to run ally attack. But after that, we'll talk about our other perks. Sign Contract, if you run my strat, it's not consistent. I know the guideline said consistent strats, but if you have Vending Machine, you can get the Nicotine Rush buff, which makes you even faster. But having extra funds isn't normally a bad thing anyway. It's not the best perk though. You still take fame, but as you move into the other perks, Parting Gift is also very situational. Parting Gift's main situational use, at least in my opinion, is that when you reach the lighthouse, you don't technically need your allies anymore, unless you're fighting Takushi-san. But if you know you're not fighting Takushi-san for a while, and you need to survive the lighthouse stamina or reason checks, you can let go of allies and hope you hit the right stat that increases. Otherwise, shrug, I guess. That's why Party Gift isn't as great. In fact, it's probably below Sign Contract. And then I think there's a fourth one. Oh, I think Curse Signs or something signs. Occult Signs. Which for some reason gets you experience for each spell used, so actually that might be the lowest. Because a situation like that is normally not going to happen, so I mean... Yeah, so funny, basically just get fame, so that's why she's still below. She's definitely below Koji. Koji's perks are a bit more normalized for himself, whereas Mizuki's are kind of... Occult Sign is just out there. Parting Gift and Signed Contract, not as useful. They're still okay, but definitely Signed Contract is in the meh okay category. And then you want Fame. But if you're in, say, a 7th Curse run, obviously you don't get that, which is why her win rate decreases further. Zectast Azal absolutely bother her. Old Gods Forbid you're in Zectast Azal plus 7th Curse. You get funds to get a weapon, but her stats are low enough as it is, so... And there are no Charisma weapons, for those who don't know. But yeah, as we move past Kyrie because we already talked about it. I would still rather play Mizuki than Kyrie. This might be subjective, so really, maybe Kyrie is above Mizuki. Mizuki might even be below Yashiro in some cases, but I feel like with Ally Attack being able to use it, I can see why as we move into Yashiro might be above Mizuki, but I'm putting him below because that experience, the need to get more experience can actually hurt him more. But he has one very good perk that I don't make much use of for some reason, but Zeal. Does Parting Gift even work, or does the spell version of it work? Parting Gift does work. I swear it works. I just haven't used it enough to remember that for sure. But I feel like 80% certain that Parting Gift works. For if you're talking about the one where you release an ally and a stat increases, it does work. I'm pretty sure. But again, the situation in which you use it and it's like meh, or you use it and it's like hey, or you use it and it's like ah. It's mostly going to be a disappointment. But maybe you get, in my opinion, mainly strength or charisma. But you usually want to fight an enemy, and you need that ally. But hey, yeah. As we move to Yashiro, so Yashiro has the faith mechanic, which if you're not efficient, we're assuming you are, so no human errors, but. Yeah, he gets extra experience, so in a way, that's why I can see him being above Mizuki, or even above Kyrie, or probably even higher, above Haru. I'm putting him at his bare minimum, which is around, probably a 75-72% win rate minimum, where if you keep Faith high, you won't really feel the extra 20 experience. I keep forgetting because he used to need, I think, 133 experience to level up. Now he only needs 120, which can make a difference, especially with the Faith bonus. So with positive 5 plus faith, you get more experience at the end of a mystery, and then a little bonus that you get you have extra max reason or stamina, which is nice if you get good spells, but that's a very niche case. Really what it happens is that you have extra HP at the very beginning. So if you're on Ath and you start with a spell, or you're prepared to tank some damage like in Scissors, you can grab the Cursed Scissors with Yashiro. That's why I don't think he's actually as low as I put him, but just to be safe, I'm putting him below Mizuki, but above Juri. And then as we move into his perks, I know I didn't really talk about his faith mechanic, but we're assuming you keep it positive. If anyone has a strategy for negative faith, please let me know, but usually if you have negative faith, the reason why I don't consider that is because you're normally getting smacked, and you can't really afford to get smacked too much on Harbinger, unless you have an infinite or pseudo-infinite setup as Yashiro, but even infinites and pseudo-infinites I don't find as much use in a vacuum of quick play Harbinger runs. or I don't find the opportunities, but eh. But yeah, going into his perks, Zeal, pretty much, I think it's pretty much his best perk. Let me try to remember all of his perks. But Zeal is decrease of 4 max stamina and reason, but you get an extra point of damage. And as I said before, you can comfortably play at around 7 to 8 to 9 max stamina reason and still be perfectly fine. And because you're working with positive faith, you won't be losing that much max stamina, max reason overall anyway. So that extra point of damage is much appreciated. Where he can use, fast weapons. He's made to use any weapon that he really wants. Even though his stats are a bit lower than anyone else's, although it doesn't look like he specializes too much here and there, but it's still a damage increasing perk, even though it has a requirement, is still very, very good. Moving on, there's then stealth, where it's kind of meh, but it's basically a bonus if you're going to if you don't have quick thinking. Basically, if you have every other generic perk and you don't want to reroll other than quick thinking, and you see stealth, you pretty much take stealth, because chances are you'll run into an enemy that you don't want to fight, and you might as well take 10 experience as Doom increases by 5. But I think the better perk over stealth is My Weird Collection. So it grants you a random occult item. This can be anywhere from, I think, Gruesome Totem is included, but can also include the Occult Diary, and then every other item. There might be a few, maybe Cursed Doll or something. I forgot what you can actually get, but really, it's pretty much a 50-50 in terms of what item you can get, because if nothing else, you can sell the item that you get for 1 fun. So in a way, he can also, a very small positive is that he can avoid Azal's fun rule by removing funds, and then when you get My Weird Collection, you just sell the item you get, unless it's a Occult Diary and maybe Gruesome Totem on a non-Akamanto run. But again, when I mention very specific examples, these usually attribute to another extra, at most, 0.5-1% win rate to their win rate overall, in my opinion. So, yeah, and I think there's one more perk. Why am I forgetting about it? Well, why am I going crazy? I might need to go in game and look at it, but let's actually find out. So yeah, I think he has a 4th perk. I'm pretty sure he has a 4th perk. You'll hear characters in the background because I'm gonna look for this. So yeah, let's see. Also, he starts off with the Bronze Crucifix, I forgot. But normally, ghost encounters are kind of 50-50 in terms of if you want to actually fight them normally or not. So it's not really something I account for, but hey. On your own, that's it. So on your own, +1 to all stats if you have no allies with you. Allies are pretty much here and there. If you take Kana, on your own is nice to have, because by the time you level up and get on your own, unless you're on an ill-fated run, but if you're on an ill-fated run, you can look at your mysteries first, and because you don't allow for rerolls, if you see something like Kana in your run, or you see a place where you can get an ally, you don't need to take on your own. But if you know you're not going to get a lot of allies, or you get one on accident, but you can just send that ally on an enemy, and you still benefit from on your own. So basically, it's a good little option select perk. You don't need it, but it's definitely above, I think, the other 2 perks, Stealth and maybe My Weird Collection, if you're looking for more consistency, in my opinion. I know you can't see what's on screen, but I just wanted to pull up the game so that I can have, look at these things. But Zeal definitely probably should be as strong as perk. I just don't like it because I'm unluckier in events, but that's a subjective statement compared to a vacuum of Harbinger quick play runs where Zeal's probably going to do you more good. But yeah, I think that's all I really say about Yashiro. I wouldn't play him over Mizuki, funny enough, because Mizuki just has, she has a chance of just doing extremely high damage, whereas Yashiro always needs to ramp up to it in some way, shape, or form. And if you do ramp up to it, you lose. You basically, again, for example, on Ill-Fated, if I took Zeal immediately, you lose 4 stamina and 4 reason immediately, which is not bad. You're still getting an extra point of damage, but I would rather increase my Doom a lot and manage that through events than take 4 stamina for max reason immediately, if we're looking at beginning of the game. But otherwise, in a normal, compared to Mizuki, compared to Kyrie, they're a bit more stable in my opinion than Yashiro. But again, I don't have a lot of Yashiro under my belt compared to a majority of characters, so he could be up here, but I'm putting him down here. But this is still like 74, 73, 72% win rate as we move into Jury, who can be very good. Again, that's a little general idea about looking at this tier list is that, as I may have mentioned before, but I'll mention it at least once this stream, is that I think every character has a very high win rate in World of Horror. because again, like I said, you have a lot of control aside from the characters affecting your run, and aside from Old God backstories affecting your run. But that being said, considering every backstory Old God combination is why these win rates are a little bit lower, but not like C, D tier low, where they have a less than 60% chance to win. I think every character, even Hayano and Puppet-chan and Yumiko here, have at least a 60% win rate. But, yeah, Juri specifically, as we move back to her. So her mechanic, for those who don't know, is that there is a horror gauge that increases, scales off about like 1.5 per doom. It increases by... no, every point of doom increases the horror progress by about 2%. You know, there's some wonky calculations here, like entering shops, but for the most part, 1 doom is equal to 2 horror progress. But as of 1.0, moving onward, at some point she got... your horror progress decreases by 10%. At the end of every mystery. So now basically you can level up a lot more as Juri. That extra 1 or 2 levels can make a huge difference. And so when you level up, Juri's perks might not be the greatest, but they're still pretty useful. If not just for the extra doom decrease. Or stat increase, depending on if you like to run weapons, but as we'll talk about the perks later, really you only want one of them. Otherwise, on an all-perk run, though, which is the other 50% of why Juri is not in B tier, really, is that if you're on an all-perk run, you can level up very quickly, and you can immediately grab things like Deduction, Core Strength, Adrenaline, Fast Swimmer, and yeah, pretty much at the end of your first mystery, you can be very powered up to deal with your run. But that being said, it's not the end-all be-all, because there's just as much RNG chance that you get pretty much nothing. But as we move into our perks, I think our perks also help out as well. So, just to complete the horror progress explanation, once your horror progress reaches 100%, your experience is set to 0 for the remainder of the run. Shrug. That's the end of the sentence. So, as we move into Juri's perks... Oh, also Juri levels up at 50 experience, which is why you can level up pretty quickly. But, yeah, Juri's perks, Elusive, Doom decreases by 5. You pretty much always take this. You might even take it over Quick Thinking, but if you believe in the RNG, sure. But if we're looking at consistency here, you usually just take Elusive. That helps along with her personal item. Oh, I didn't really talk about a lot of their personal items, but if I haven't talked about it, it's because they don't really affect it as much, save for Kyrie's bag, which can be used for pseudo-infinites, even with the nerf that it got, I think, but... Yeah, for Juri specifically, her personal item is definitely a standout, like Haru's, like Toshiaki's, like Aiko's, and somewhat to Aika as well, where the checkbook now is very Doom efficient for the funds you get. So that's why I think she's still at least comfortable A tier, because this allows you to grab... You basically use it twice, and I think it's... How much is it? Let me actually check. Goodness gracious. Oh, I hit quick play. Oh, we got Juri. Hey, fun times. But... Let's just make sure. Oop, I got Exquisite Taste. Oh my goodness, pain! But essentially, you use the checkbook twice, and I think, let's assume you get, like... No, I'm just gonna check just to be sure. So, we're gonna do a Juri run really quickly here. You can't see what's happening, but I'm just doing this just to see. But essentially, like I said, you use it twice, and then you have enough funds for the rest of the run. Sometimes you don't, but it's better than other characters where they have to worry about out of funds, where, as Juri, when you prepare, you know you're gonna get something that you can use. And will be useful. But hey... this may be the only game where you can make a bunch of high school start being yeah. Love a Scissor Lady wants to show us so they yeah. So it's a lot. I accidentally I took the checkbook. So the checkbook is 4 Doom for 3 funds. So yeah, for 8 Doom you have 6 funds, which is enough to usually sustain you for a little bit. You can use it again, but on average, basically Juri spends less Doom trying to get weapons than most other characters. Well, and while that, you may ask, well, at that point, Jordan, why isn't she above Koji, Mizuki, and Yashiro? That's because her perks really, I think, hurt her a bit, but that's why, I think if nothing else, she's kind of hovering around here. If she's not at 72%, or she's not at 74%, she's still at 72% down here with Yashiro. So basically tied with my version of Yashiro. Although Yashiro could be higher, Juri could also be higher here too, but these Mizuki and Koji have, like, not I win buttons, but very comfortable things to do. Kyrie could get a jackpot in her spell, whereas Juri still has to work up for it, but Juri can immediately get a weapon for a good amount of Doom, so that's really... Oh, Juri's other perks. Knowledge increases by 2, Doom increases by 2, Dexterity increases by 2, Doom increases by 2. Those stats do sound good, but unfortunately, aside from knowledge weapons, A lot of people like to push the steak knife on Harbinger. I don't. This is subjective, so I can't really say as much more on it. But yeah, steak knife, dexterity weapons. Not really a reason to build dexterity. Not really a reason to build dexterity for dodge. And katana, you don't even need more than one dexterity to really make the katana work. So you need more than one dexterity to, I think, desperate prep strong with the katana, but still. That's why Jiri's perks by extension are not great, because you don't want to increase Doom any more than you need to. Now, if you're on a Zictas run, it helps a bit more, which is why, I'm not completely throwing them out, but I think Jiri's like low A, so 72, 71% win rate minimum. It's probably a lot higher, really. So all these characters are probably about, in A tier, are probably like 75, 74% minimum. Working up to Moriko, which is 80%, I think very bare minimum. Possible S tier, but Jiri specifically, down here is pretty comfortable. Now, obviously, Commoner absolutely blows her out of the water, but Commoner really only still amounts to about 4 to 8% of your runs in total, if even that. And with Old God combinations, where I'm saying 4 to 8% because if you have Zictas Commoner, if you have Azal Commoner, you get absolutely bodied as Jiri. So, yeah. But anyway, moving on to Kana. So Kana is a very specific thing. I feel like Kana could be a lot higher, but again, I don't have enough Kana in me to really make an accurate statement on their place in the tier list. So Kana, they don't have any character specific perks, but their innate passive is where it's at. And for those who don't know, it's always there / Cat's Curiosity, where if you die to stamina or reason, your Doom will increase by 5 instead, and the game will set your stamina and or reason back up to 8. But Kana only has a max of 8 stamina and 8 max reason. Now, we're gonna even go so far as to say that you can use Mind Drain and Ghostly Spear infinitely. But again, those are you're still gambling on RNG, and Doom is the greatest problem anyway. So even if you have infinite uses of Ghostly Spear and Mind Drain, you still have to worry about events. You still have to worry about how much Doom you have. Old Gods forbid you're on an Azal run and you immediately get the experience rule or something like that. So while those are infinites in themselves, yeah. And then there's also, we'll assume you have the God comp of Mind Drain, Ghostly Spear, and the one that heals stamina, but you lose max stamina. For those who don't know, anything that costs max stamina or reason doesn't affect Kana. Period. But even with that, yeah, it's tricky. It can be tricky to play Kana, even with a lot of knowledge. Now, that being said, Kana can be a lot higher if for no other reason than, or at least another contributing reason is that, for those who don't know, if you die to, so what you might think is, well, if you die to stamina and reason at the same time, your Doom increases by 10. No, that's not what happens. What actually happens is, and there are not a lot of events like this, but this mainly happens in encounters. I saw something in chat, but I'll get to it after this. So, say an enemy does 4 all damage. If it does 4 all damage and you have 3 stamina and 2 reason left, if you die to both at the same time during an encounter, your Doom will only increase by 5, and that's a lot better than dying to stamina and then dying to reason, or vice versa, where Doom will increase by 10 because it increases Doom once by 5, and then you die to the other HP and your Doom increases by 5 again. So that's not too much for a contributing factor, but it's something to think about, and it's another positive in Kana's case. If it were the opposite, where your Doom does increase by 10, then Kana would be definitely below and be lower A tier at most. But small little tips and tricks there. However, like I said, Kana doesn't have any innate perks, but maybe you do want Final Stretch, which is overall more HP healed per level up. Or you can heal a lot of HP because you take 2 stamina plus Final Stretch if you're leveling up that much, and then you get Final Stretch. But Kana things. But as I may have mentioned before, well, we'll mention it now, Doom is the biggest contributing factor, and Doom is something that you have to worry about on a lot of Harbinger runs. So that's why, while Kana's mechanic is very interesting, it is difficult to work around in more than a few combinations, as opposed to other characters where they at least start with a comfortable amount of Doom, and they don't have anything that increases Doom as part of their kit, as opposed to Kana, who does. Yeah, by that statement, yes, Toshiaki counts as well, but you're not using his perks, funny enough. Because, as I mentioned before, Doom uses in this game are more, in my opinion, better for you than Toshiaki's perks. But for Kana, you're forced to have a Doom increase if you die to either any of these stamina or reason, whether through events, whether through enemies, or both. Did I know that any decrease in max stamina or reason don't apply to Kana? Last time we checked, so if you just roll the history club bit, wait for flesh regrowth, mind drain. Yeah, so that's the thing though, right? But yeah, you do have to run to those 3 spells, so as I mentioned before, and especially when I'm running an Eldritch Parasite run, so we'll talk about this more because it does apply to Kama, and someone brought it up. So you do have to roll into one of those, and yeah, not dying to stamina at all is pretty bad for... it's pretty good. It's very, 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 very good. In fact, like, if stamina were the thing you worry about most in World of Horror, Kana would be up here if you had to roll for a thing. But because RNG exists, and we're assuming an average amount of RNG, let's assume it takes you about 25% Doom, and if you have 25% Doom to get Mind Drain, Ghostly Spear, and mainly Flesh Regrowth, then yes, that's very good. But you can argue the same for Mizuki, who spends about 20-25% Doom to get Ally Attack. And then there are backstories where if you get Eldritch Parasite, you're doomed, literally and figuratively. And then Flesh Regrowth has no effect. But as you mentioned, excuse me, coughing. Mind Drain and Ghostly Spear are very, very useful, but you still have to worry about events, your mystery combination. Again, for this tier list, you can't reroll mysteries when you get them. So on and so forth. But again, that's why I said Kana could still be very up here. Probably still below Moriko. Moriko, I think, is the more consistent of the two still. Even if you had the God comp of Mind Drain, Ghostly Spear, and Flesh Regrowth on top of anything else, let's even say within 15% Doom, that's pretty much getting a weapon. And I know you don't die to stamina, but Doom and Reason are what you more normally worry about as Kana and in the game in general. And then stamina is the thing you worry about the least. Again, if you're worried more about stamina in general, she would be Kana, they'd be a lot higher. But again, I wouldn't deny, like, if you want to put her higher up, like here, but maybe above Jury. So we'll make that switch a little bit. Yeah, we'll make the switch. So above Jury, because we're allowing infinite uses of Mind Drain, Ghostly Spear, and Flesh Regrowth. I feel like there's one more, but I forgot. But anywho, yeah, we'll put Kana above Jury. They deserve that much. But I think Yashiro's still above Kana, just for consistency's sake. I don't feel like it is subjectively, but I think objectively he is still above them. So yeah. And now we move into the lower tier. I think Miku deserves to be higher, but for some reason I feel like Miku's at top of B tier, like at 70%. I would still rather play Kana and Jury above Miku, as odd as that sounds, even though I like Miku, because I feel... I don't know, maybe I'm doing something wrong, but if nothing else, like, barely at 70%, so really it should be low A, but as we move to Miku's mechanics, so for those who don't know, Miku has Mayhem. Every 20% Doom, your stats increase by 1, which means overall, at 80%, all of your stats will be increased by 4. Which does lend itself well to fighting against Sectas, which increases your Doom, which decreases your stats by 1 every 21% Doom. So Miku doesn't ever have to worry about Sectas, but again, that's a very small amount of runs. This is looking at a vacuum of runs, assuming you get each Old God and backstory combination equally. So in general, overall, I feel like Miku has a harder time than all of the characters above her. But she's also not bad either. It's just that Doom ends up increasing a lot more than you want. Because like I said, Harbinger is what you're worrying about most of the time. And while Miku benefits from that, you're still gonna, like, there's no innate thing you get where you can decrease Doom after the fact of getting Mayhem. If that happened, Miku would be around Haru's level. And I swear that's not just because I like Miku as well, right under Haru. But because that's not the case, you can experience some problems. And in runs where most characters benefit from, Scissors into Recluse, Miku does not, because your stats, like 3 Knowledge into Recluse is pain. And then if you do Scissors and Recluse together, your Doom isn't increasing enough to... You basically want that extra point of stamina, but really you want 2. And by that time, if you do that before Mysteries 3 and 4, Mystery 2, that can lend itself to a lot of bad situations. But as you move to Miku's perks, they're the saving grace, and why Miku's at least, either at bottom of A or very top of B, where Adrenaline increases all of your action speed. Well, mainly offensive actions, but apparently affects Brace as well, which is why it's very, very good. Also, I don't have any background music, so let's put the main title screen BGM. But yeah, Adrenaline increases your action speed. If these 3 characters weren't a good reason why, on top of Moriko with Deft Handling, Adrenaline But Adrenaline is only one part, and if you reroll a bunch, yeah, you're getting Doom for Mayhem, but Doom. So, moving into the other perks, and the other perks are also the reason why Miku's lower. So Pickpocket and Looting, we'll put them both in the same vein because one grants you a higher chance, quote-unquote, of getting items, or changes the item that you get at the end of some encounters, which you normally don't experience, and if you go out of your way to look for these items, you're taking more Doom than intended, or damage in general. And the other one, Looting, has I think it's guaranteed funds, but no one uses the vending machines, and no one really shops in the middle of runs, save for me, so it's not a useful perk in that way either. I think there's one more, yeah. But then the other perk, so Miku's half and half. Doomed Already. Amazing perk, especially on Harbinger, where you're expected to fail more often than not. But you're still usually going negative when you fail events. It's still a nice pin cushion, or just cushion, but pin cushion. And you still want Adrenaline over it, but it's still better than, Fast Hands, Reporter's Bag. Not Second Sight, but maybe. Depends on how much you fail. Basically, the more you fail, the more you get out of Doomed Already as a perk, but you usually don't want to be failing events too much anyway. It's situational, but you would still take Doomed Already over other perks you see, like Occult Signs, maybe Stealth. No, definitely Stealth, maybe Zeal. Kana doesn't have any perks. You get my point. And then Adrenaline is the top breadwinner, but I don't think it's enough to push Miku to A tier, or at least a 71% win rate. Kind of minimum, because things can go badly Doom wise and definitely reason wise, even though you have Doomed Already, and you're not guaranteed to get Doomed Already as well. But again, maybe Miku belongs still like up here somewhere. Again, I usually want to put, like, if I had my way, Moriko and Mimi would probably be like at bottom, because this is such a wide gap, as I realize. But yeah, because commoner backstory exists, because bad backstory combinations can exist. Actually, no, yeah. If I'm gonna go 80% here, I'm gonna put these two up here. So Haru, I feel like, should be up there as well. Yeah, I think Haru's gonna be up here as well. So let's actually shift everyone up a bit, except for Yumiko. Yeah, except for Yumiko, unfortunately. But yeah, moving back to Miku. Yeah, Miku overall, you'll get stat increases, and then you stack down on top of any stat you want to increase, and it's pretty good. But it's not enough to really push her elevator above. Again, maybe above here, but this is kind of, if I were to advise the average player to play a character and, give them tips on what to do, I still think, I think Miku is above Juri. Yeah, I think Miku can be above Juri. Again, at this point, I have to think about mysteries. Yeah, I'd have to think about mystery combinations. Like, in general, what kind of mystery... I know, on average, you're going to get very... With how many times the game gives 12 rolls, Doomed Already is very appreciated. Yeah, on top of Harbinger. So the reason why I say Harbinger makes you fail more on average is because on Harbinger, you have 2 Doom threat locations, as opposed to True Believer, where you only have 1. And that means not double the amount of events where you have a +2 modifier to events, because if you didn't know, if you investigate a doomed location and you do a stat check, you get a +2 modifier against you, which pushes down your chances of succeeding, obviously, on top of the rolls that you already get. But we're assuming the rolls are kind of equalized, so in 100 investigations, you roll each 1 through 12 an even number of times. But that means that in Harbinger difficulty, with another doomed threat location, you have a +2 modifier on all of these rolls. So yeah, but then Mayhem kind of fluctuates that. I still think I'd rather take Kana, because there are more ways to deal with Doom than there are to deal with Reason. Although you can just get absolutely oofed on Reason. So maybe Miku can be higher. Because then I have to think about the character's accessibility to play. Actually, no, No. I put Miku above. Yeah, I'll put Miku above Kana. Kana, they do require a bit more knowledge and hope in terms of RNG and like, yeah, hey, things are going to go well. Actually, no, because infinites, right? If you get Mind Drain, Ghostly Spirit, it's good. As opposed to Miku, who just has Adrenaline, which is very, very much appreciated. But and then Juri can get a guaranteed weapon, but Juri's her perks are not. Well, as opposed to Kana, their lack of perks actually helps out because it gets you quick thinking and stuff. So, slight change to the tier list. Why not just say on average we'll roll a 6, maybe plus 1 third. I mean, that's another way to look at it. That's another way I looked at it as well. But that's not always true, because like I just said, Doom locations essentially push that down. So really, okay, just to say it out, if we're working on that, which is not a bad guideline, which is someone what said in chat. If you're going to roll an average of 6, then basically you succeed 40% of your events. 33 to 40% of your events, because you don't know what locations are going to get their modifiers, and you don't know what mysteries you're going to take, which changes which locations you investigate, which is why this, on average, your success rate will fluctuate. But let's just say 30 to 40%. Old gods forbid you get ill-fated, but if you're on ill-fated, funny enough, that can work in your favor as well. So it's still, you succeed about 40% of your events, which, yeah, for Miku, Doomed already provides a lot more value. But I don't think Miku is above Yashiro, Mizuki, Kirie, Koji. Kirie and Koji are more just stable, average characters, whereas Mizuki, Yashiro, and Kana have things that can work out very well for them. Juri has something that's okay, but it still costs Doom and stuff. But Miku thrives off Doom, so these two kind of bounce off of each other. Whereas you're spending less Doom with Juri to get a weapon, but Miku, you want to be at 20% or above to immediately get a stat boost. But if you're on Fatalist and you accidentally run into a non-town mystery, because the two mysteries that you see are, out of town, and you're like, or because if you're taking out of town mystery, you don't have any control over Doom manipulation, as opposed to having Ramen arms where you can immediately prepare, get stuff. And then Miku's guitar is nothing to talk about. So yeah, I think Miku is a bit more stable than Juri, but not by much. If nothing, these two are tied somewhere. But yeah, these two are interchangeable. But Miku things, I like Miku. It's just so. And then we move to Yumiko, which again, I don't admit I have a lot of Yumiko under my belt. But still, even with what I've seen, even with the buff that Yumiko got, because Harbinger pounds Yumiko's strength down to 4, you now require a level up to make use of the Lucky Bat, which is what you get. On a non-Harbinger difficulty, I know this is not what the tier list is based off of, but we need to establish how this works. So with 5 strength, you can do prep attack with the Lucky Bat. And while you don't get to immediately benefit, because Yumiko needs a perk to work with as well, this means you are very, very reliant on leveling up immediately, and then also hoping to get swing and hit. If you at least get 5 strength, it's still kind of workable, if you know what you're doing, but on some backstories, or the cost of getting that first level up can be very, very detrimental to your run. Which is why Yumiko's a lot lower here on the tier list. Probably 69, 68%. 70% if you really know what you're doing, maybe even bottom of A, but I don't... It's an uphill battle. It's definitely an uphill battle. Maybe I should not have made these tiers this way, because now S is conflated because it's 19%, 10%, 10%, 10%, but again, I think the thesis statement that is a lot... You can win with every character with a good win rate. These 3 characters kind of oof. And then the baseball is actually not a bad prepare item, but again, that's only one of the very small positives that Yumiko gets in her run. And then we'll go over Yumiko's perks. Dodge, Swift Maneuver. Your dodge rate increases by 10, so you go from 50 to 60%. Sure, on average, that can be very useful if 60% of the dodges that you need to do hit. But the problem with dodge, on top of just, the RNG, is that you have to put in damage. Dodge doesn't do innate damage on its own. If it did in some way, shape, or form, even with 1 or 2 damage, it'd actually be a lot better. But don't even know the last 2 characters who are. Oh, so we're adding them on for the sake of thoroughness, because they're custom characters given to you when you download World of War, whether through Steam or otherwise, like itch.io. I'll go over them when I get to them, but just to complete Yumiko, because there's not much else more to say. Moriko has Morbid Inspiration, and I think she got a 4th perk as well. I don't remember. I'm actually gonna check now, because I forgot. So let's take a quick look at that. Again, you don't see what's on screen right now, but I just want to look at a thing. So I feel like she got 1 more perk. Haunting Dreams, was that it? No. Gain extra reason for completing a mystery. Unfortunately, there's only 1 reason. It's not bad, but in Yumiko's case, it's bad because you want to take swing and hit. Basically, if Yumiko only had 1 character perk and it was swing and hit, she would actually be in low A tier, but because she has to compete with Haunting Dreams and Swift Maneuver, I think Swift Maneuver is the worst of the 2, but I feel like Yumiko has another character perk. Why am I going crazy? Anywho. If she doesn't, again, that's all for the better, because that means that's less perks you have to... that competes with getting swing and hit. If I didn't already say it, swing and hit increases your damage by 2 for every attack that's prepared by a prep action, which therefore means you get guaranteed 12 damage per turn if you do prep attack with the Lucky Bat. The unfortunate part of that is that you do want to brace sometimes still, but it's a hard guideline. And then, yeah, like I said, Yumiko has to immediately level up. On top of it, it's a very small negative, but Yumiko starts off with concussion, which actually does hurt a lot more than you think, because while Yumiko starts with a weapon, and that would normally allow her to take Recluse, like Moriko and Mimi can. Not that you're normally doing that, but you can. Yumiko can't do that, because with 3 knowledge, you're taking an extra turn of damage in Recluse, which is not good. And then aside from that, Commoner destroys Yumiko. Azal and Zektas definitely destroys Yumiko, because you want to prep attack. And if you can't do that much... And the problem with it, again, it's not even that much, because I think with Zektas, if you get swing and hit, you can do prep strong, which grants you 8 damage, I think, still, instead of prep attack, but you normally want to brace as well, so bracing is very important, and Yumiko not being able to do that reliably with the kit that she has still presents problems, even when Lucky Bat was buffed so that I think it's faster, question mark? But again, I don't have enough Yumiko under my belt. Maybe it could be even... I don't think she's any higher than, like, middle of... 75... I don't think she's any higher than 78-ish% win rate, but... minimum. Again, we're looking at a vacuum of runs with consistent, no human errors. And if that's the case, all these characters could be above, like, 80... I want to say 80-85%, but if we're accounting for average RNG as well, yeah, Yumiko is not so great. Moving on to Puppet-chan. So for those who don't know, and in fact, I'll need to probably pull up Puppet-chan's Ito file, just to remember, but Puppet-chan starts off with, oh my sweet goodness, I cannot find the thing. 15 funds and I think something else. Let me just make sure, because I tossed the Ito file somewhere. So yeah, Puppet-chan starts off with, I mean, you can see the stats on screen, but 4 strength, 2 dexterity, 3 perception, 5 charisma, 5 knowledge, 5 luck. And they start off with 15 funds, which normally would be very good. And then they get an energy drink, but that's... having 1 dexterity on Harbinger, even with the energy drink, can lend itself to a lot of 0 statting. Not as much as you think, so if you're going to try to be fair here, yeah, that's not going to happen too much, but it's still not great. In fact, maybe Puppet-chan is above Yumiko here, because being able to buy a weapon, anything of your choosing, on top of cigarettes and whatnot, does help a lot with being able to fight normally. But, again, I've played Yumiko more than Puppet-chan Hayano, although even I know Hayano is, like, near bottom, if not at bottom. But, yeah, these 15 funds, we can make a strategy around them. And knowing what I know from people using shops, 15 funds is a lot to work with. You don't even need to prepare, and because preparing as a custom character gets you 2 pretty meh items, but yeah, not having to use prepare, exquisite taste, value, so you can just leave rest. You don't need to worry about funds. You spend about 10 funds getting a pack of cigarettes and a weapon, or a weapon and something else, and you're good to go. Whereas opposed to Yumiko, if you don't like the Lucky Bat for whatever reason, you gotta find another weapon. So I think, funny enough, Puppet-chan is above. I think funds plays a pretty huge part in making efficient use of everything, on top of just events removing funds as well. So, in essence, Puppet-chan may never need to use prepare. But again, I don't have a lot of Puppet-chan runs under my belt anyway. That might be the next intermission for the next 2 days, because I need to play these 2 characters more. But yeah, not much else. Oh, actually, no, there is, because their perk packs are Hounded Artist and Inner Strength. Inner Strength is so for those who don't know, Inner Strength is a perk pack that gives you Unrelenting and Predestined. Those 2 perks those 2 perks respectively give you +2 max stamina, +2 stamina. So essentially, healing with that extra threshold. And then the other one is +2 max reason, +2 reason. Not the greatest. You definitely want, obviously, most other perks, even Second Sight, maybe even Reporter's Bag over it, but they do provide a good little bonus on top of if you want to heal more. But Puppet-chan needs the stats, which is why it's not so great. So, Well, actually, no, that fits in well, because then you can take one of those two while increasing a stat, but that's not the hugest increase to your survivability. On top of just failing a lot of runs, because Puppet Chan's stats in general are very low. I think Puppet Chan doesn't even reach the average stat count, which is about 36 to 39. Let me count. 5 luck, 15, 18, 12, yeah, 24 overall stats. That's quite bad, even with 15 funds, which is why Puppet Chan is so low on this tier list. And then there's Hounded Artist, which is, I think, Morbid Inspiration and Haunting Dreams. Morbid Inspiration, you get experience per instance of reason loss, but yeah. Maybe get Puppet Chan a rifle. Aside from the old shotgun, all of the rifle firearms are pretty not good. Even because then you'd have to buy bullets from them as well, and that's not good. Unless there's a strat around that I don't know, because I don't use that strat often, but I feel like it's because it's not good. But anywho, yeah, Puppet Chan is pretty down there in terms of tier. So, moving on to Hayano, who is at the bottom because, hey, Hayano, while it seems like there are some interesting things going on, it's actually, in practice, not so great. So, 4 strength, 5 dexterity, 6 perception, 7 charisma, 5 knowledge, 6 luck. You have a lot of charisma, so you can run with ally attack, but the reason why Mizuki works a lot better, a huge contributing factor in my opinion at least, if that's not objective then it's subjective, is that Mizuki starts off with an ally, and while that's like, yeah, but you can recruit 3 students at the schoolyard, that extra ally being Iwa, being Ryoko, being Fujiko, being Kyoko, means a lot more than an extra student. Most of the time, in my opinion, at least. But this is assuming Hayano's running ally attack. If you don't choose to run ally attack, you have... So, Hayano starts off with the Cursed Doll and Occult Signs. She also has a LinkedIn event if you add that. We're going to assume that you add that. But this doesn't really provide you a lot, because it's an event that has a prerequisite from one of her character perks from the perk packs, which doesn't even grant you all that much either. Basically, you're trading a level up to be able to do this event properly. And this apartment takes place in the apartment where you're not really investigating as much unless you have Recluse and or Arms. And maybe Ramen, but a small contributing factor, but it's not huge compared to other characters like Koji, who, you know, when you get Deduction, you can feel the effects a lot more. If you get Second Sight as Kyrie, if you get Deft Handling as Moriko, those help with their design a lot more than Hayano's does. Not saying that Hayano's mechanic isn't interesting, it just doesn't provide as much, but hey. And then Occult Signs. Occult Signs, I think that's experience per spell cast, but that's also assuming, because funny enough, Hayano doesn't have the Magic Child. Her perk packs are Inner Strength, which again is Predestined and Unrelenting, and then Tarot Reader, which are... let me check. I know what the effects do, but I want to know their names. So, things: Tarot Reader, Premonition, event options display which stat will be tested against when selected. Again, assuming no human error, you don't need this perk at all. But if it's required in an event, sure. But the event that it's required in doesn't grant you all too much. I think it's like, let's just even say it's for reason -2 Doom, a Doom decrease of 2. That's not great. Even so. And then Stars Are Right automatically pass all luck skill checks, which I hear is bugged, but let's assume that it actually does work. It, with base events, every event you pretty much have an equal number of stat checks for all stats, which, while this is important, while Stars Are Right is probably Hayano's strongest perk, it's not enough to elevate her above a lot of other characters. Again, throwing along with the fact that she has Mizuki-ish stats, which means if you're trying to run with a weapon, it's going to be very painful. So, again, and if you notice, the trend here is usually being able to fight comfortably. Also, Hayano starts off with the Cursed Doll, which you use 1 to 2 stamina to deal 4 to 6 damage, which is nice in some cases, but it's still very situational, and on average, you're not really finding as much use in it, because... You're usually able to do more than... So we're looking at this number-wise now. Let's assume you take even just 1 damage. 1 damage to deal 4 damage is kind of standard, if anything average. So there's a chance for you to do better, but it's also a chance for you to do worse. So the worst you get is you take 2 damage, but you deal 4 damage. This is instant damage, but essentially you're taking attack for free. And the best you can do is you take 1 point of damage, but deal 6 damage, which is very good, but it's still not enough. because a lot of characters can do better by way of either bracing comfortably into 4 damage or just getting a lot more damage in general, which is why Hayana is, so what is something? Stars Align, think only boosts luck to 12, so you can still roll 1 in non-safe locations. Yeah, something like that. I think it's something like that. It's less, it's less than the effect of something. I feel like there's something else, but yeah, as it is, like, it will even go, if stars are right, even if stars are right, like, guaranteed all luck check successes no matter what, Hayano might be above Yumiko, maybe above Puppet-chan. Definitely still below Jury, though, in my opinion, because of a stat. She needs at least 1 or 2 extra oomph here and there, either through an additional effect or improved effect. And, like, if Premonitions gave you a +2 or +3 modifier, immediately 70% win rate. But because it doesn't do anything else, because Stars Are Right is sure, it's so yeah. Again, usually if I say a character is bad, I would want an I would usually try to give a suggestion. I didn't for Yumiko and Puppet-chan though, but Puppet-chan really is just a stat increase overall. 1 to every stat would help Puppet-chan out immensely. Yumiko, I don't know what you do with Yumiko. Make dodge better. That's an indirect buff. I really don't know what else aside, because giving a stat increase might already be too much, but maybe not. Yeah. But so yeah, at this point we're kind of in the. So this is kind of just a tier list. This is not going to be the whole stream. I do want to go over more, but this is. I think this is where I'm comfortably at. The shorthand version of it is that, yeah, if I had to play, if I pick a character here, I pick say Kana. Would I play Kana over the characters below, like Miku, Juri, if we're reading left to right? And who would I play rather than Kana? Yashiro's probably still. Even though I think these two are interchangeable. No, I'll still rather play Yashiro, because Yashiro, I feel a bit more comfortable, even though he's my least liked character gameplay-wise. I think Yashiro still has a better time, in my opinion, at least than Kana. But objectively, overall, I think Yashiro comes out stronger because Zeal. Mainly Zeal, but then his other perks are not bad. Mizuki has ally attack. Kyrie is the average normie here. 75% win rate minimum. But then Koji starts off with the camera, which is buffed. Koji and Mizuki were the big breadwinners from 1.0 to 1.01, where they got their own things. Camera got buffed. Ally attack was introduced. Haru got buffed like 3 or 4 times over 4 years, which is why he's up here and no longer down here. Mimi, Moriko start off with weapons, and they have perks that make sense for them. Another common reason for higher tier characters here is that their perks really help their design. They may be immersive, like Hayano's is immersive, but they gameplay wise, the design of their perks and stuff do not elevate them enough on Harbinger difficulty with the guidelines set to really help them. So even on, we'll kind of apply a polishing stone here, but let me see. Not to backseat. What is my opinion on the rating backstories as well in the future? Maybe gods as well? Yeah, sure, I can do that during the weekend, because on the weekend I want to do a lot of World of Horror stuff, because this is pretty much, I think, the 4th anniversary of World of Horror's release. So, yeah, we can do that, but yeah, that'll probably be on a later date when I've prepared all the things. I mean, I could try to do it now, but I'd probably want... So, feel free to just shoot out in chat how you want me to explain the tiers of gold gods. Do you want old gods and backstory separately in terms of difficulty? Do you want old god backstory combination? Do you want both? I'll need more time to prepare those, but yeah, just to let you know, because I think the other half of this tier list, even though it's not a lot, is going to be custom characters that I made just for fun. But yeah, I just want to shoot that out in chat just so we know what we're gonna do. But I don't mind doing that. Yeah, basically, in general, off the top of my head, the rating on backstories and gods as well. Top 3 easiest backstories: 7th Curse, World of Horror backstory, and there's one more that I didn't mind really playing. But I think definitely World of Horror, 7th Curse. The reasons for that are 7th Curse, you get funds, which is better than usually even just the lack of allies, although that tanks Mizuki to like down here. Admittedly. And then World of Horror backstory, like no negative effects. Usually, most backstories, their negative effects are, on average, a lot worse than the positive effects that you can possibly get. Yeah, say separately since the difficulty depends on both characters and old guy. Yeah, okay, so yeah, we'll plan for that probably on Saturday, which is when I'll do a lot of variety things for World of Horror. Friday's going to be the Nuzlocke, but we'll see. I think Saturday, actually Saturday I wanted to do custom character tier lists, so maybe Sunday, but please let me know. Actually, based on how long this stream was, even just with 14 characters, we probably might do both at the same time, but we'll see. Again, just let me just complete the thought. So, backstories, Olga. So, hardest backstories, Commoner, Eldritch Parasite, Curious Birthmark, and medical history. Fatalist and Exquisite Taste may go there as well, but definitely top 4 are those 4 that I just mentioned earlier. Commoner has to be at least top 2, but it depends. Eldritch Price, with average RNG, Commoner isn't so bad because we assume you have everything unlocked so you can History Club for much needed perks. Although some characters still need a weapon, so maybe that's not as good. Commoner, the only effect you get out of it, I think there are no positive effect. The only effect is that your experience doesn't increase. Funny enough, this provides a small bonus in Azal, where if you get the experience rule, Azal will never hurt you, but you're still overall taking net negative on Azal Commoner. Still though, Kadak, you have to fight everything. Backstory, Commoner backstory, you can't level up. Very painful. Not leveling up in general, you have a huge accuracy debuff for your entire run. Not innately, but leveling up, again, as if people forget, every level in this game provides 10% to your accuracy, base accuracy. So being at level 1 only provides 10, whereas at the end of the run you may have a 30% accuracy boost, which is pretty important, especially for fast weapons. Oh, Knight Errant, yeah, Knight Errant is probably top 5. So top 5 worst backstories: Knight Errant, Medical History, Curious Birthmark, Eldritch Parasite, Commoner. There you go. In some order, but I think Commoner is definitely top 2. Knight Errant can be first, so can Eldritch Parasite. I think those 3 are interchangeably at the top 3, and then after those, top 4 or 5 is in some way Medical History, because Medical History, on average, you're not getting a too bad injury, if we're looking at averages here. But when you get the bad ones, you can still deal with them, and when you get tiny cuts, it's like not so bad. And then you get Discharge Summary, which isn't a huge experience boost, but it's still a boost. And then Curious Birthmark, again, on average, getting an old coin to remove 1 guaranteed curse. When you get a bad curse, either through gameplay or Curious Birthmark, depending on how well you do in encounters, is not so bad. So that's why, in my opinion, Medical History, again, objective or subjectively, Medical History and Curious Birthmark are below those 3 backstories that I mentioned, which are Eldritch Parasite, Commoner, and Knight Errant. And you'll notice that the later backstories that you unlock later are a lot worse than the ones you have earlier, but Knight Errant is kind of that special case where it was the first. I mean, Knight Errant was where there was a long period, and then we got the other things like Exquisite Taste, Fatalist, so on and so forth. Fatalist, for those who don't know, again, I'll repeat it one more time. Fatalist, you know 2 of the mysteries, so it's not like you're going in completely blind. And since we're working in base mysteries, yeah, you're not going in completely blind. But you can still run into bad situations where you're like, oh, I have Vigil and Flood. And you don't want to, you might take Vigil first, but it depends on the character you have. So yeah, and then as in terms of old gods, well, I guess we'll just mention top 2 worst too. Top 2 worst gods, Zektast, Azal. Just right off the bat. I don't think there's really a lot of arguments there. Yeah, there's some characters and or backstory combinations that are bad, depending on, you know, Katak, Ethotu, Herald, and Cthulhu. But I think the pattern follows a similar trend where later gods that you unlock, or gods that were introduced later in World of Horror's life cycle, are a lot more difficult than old gods, you know, the base 4 or 5 old gods. Which are Katak. Let me just check. I might as well check. I have the game in front of me. But let's just see here. So you start off with, I think, 4 gods, right? It's Katak, Ethotu, Ath, and Goizo. You unlock the other 5, and I think you can actually unlock them in the order that, you know, in a different order. But essentially, those 4 gods are kind of the bog standard. In fact, they may be the easiest 4 gods, even though Ethotu and Katak do quite a lot in your run. But compared to Yoghathag, which is like complete RNG, and you can't really prepare for as much. Herald and Cthulhu definitely throwing in a lot. Cthulhu throwing in town effects that you don't want a lot faster on average. And then Cthulhu adding more Doom in general are also very bad. Compared to Ath, Ath has to be the easier old god, unless you play Kyrie or spells really well for whatever reason. But even then, there's some effects that don't Ath doesn't affect some spells, funny enough, but let's assume Ath even affects spells like, that it doesn't affect right now. Ath is still the easier god of the two. Goizo turns into an escape vest because you can't rest as comfortably. Itotu and Katak are kind of special. They're kind of in the middle. But I think there might be on average or at the same level, if not easier, than Yogata, Kotorufu, and Herald. But then after that, all those three gods, and then the worst two are Zictast and Azal, because Zictast changes a lot of the characters, affects a lot, most, if not almost every character, if not all characters, to a huge degree. And Azal is just a big RNG fest in terms of Doom and stuff. Now, without human error, there's still a lot of RNG, because once you get even just curses and injury, the curse and injury rule in an Azal run, that provides a pretty heavy debuff to your, or pretty substantial increase to your Doom, at least in my opinion. But I think objectively, it provides a pretty substantial Doom increase. Not as bad as Knight Errant, but Knight Errant also depends on the mystery combination you get, and if you don't reroll mysteries, then yeah. But, as I sneeze, hold on, let me sneeze. My body! But, yeah, that's kind of the brief glance, but I think I should probably go over it either on Saturday or Sunday for a stream, but we'll see what I actually decide to do. The Nuzlocke is on Friday. I have some experience with custom characters. Do I know if it's possible to create custom old gods and backstories? No, it is not. You can only create custom characters, custom events, and custom mysteries. However, you can be very creative with just those three alone. Unfortunately, though, the dream is that we can create our own, basically, cards. And cards, by cards, I mean items, perks, status effects, like you said, old gods, but so on and so forth. Really, though, once we have the ability to create custom status effects, which include items, perks, and whatnot, as a doggo barks in the background, really you don't need old gods, but that would be the next gimme that we would want. But no, the short answer is no. But you can emulate pretty much the same thing. It's just that you don't get it perfectly, with the effect of linked events for characters, events in general, and then some immersiveness in terms of that, and or mysteries. So the short answer is no. The longer answer is, if you don't mind some immersion or some control on the player's part, you can emulate a similar feel. Basically, you can kind of create the effect of a custom old god that you want right now through the making of custom characters, events, and or mysteries. But the short answer is no. Just straight up as what people would want, you can't create custom old gods and backstories, sorry. But you can emulate them through, yeah, the inclusion of events, linked events, characters, and mysteries. Again, say it one more time. But as we go here, let me just actually do this. So what we're going to actually do here is we're going to open up another window. And we are going to do a thing. Let me just make sure I'm not accidentally oofing myself here as I do this. So we're going to move into the other part of this. If you want me to go back to the other tier list for whatever reason, I think that it's been on long enough. So let's do a thing. Oh, I made a mistake here. So let's make a tier list for custom characters. This follows the same kind of logic here. So let me actually copy a bunch of this stuff so I have it available when I work on the custom character. So this next tier list is based on custom. I could make a subjective tier list as well. I think I'll do that. Actually, you know what? I should do that now. So let's make a subjective tier list based on what I believe for myself, if no one else. So let's do that really quickly. So we need another window here. Hopefully nothing weird appears, but I probably should stop using the thing as well. I didn't mean that to download. We want to do this. Game, please. Okay. And let me just do the thing. Oh my goodness, my throat. I don't have water in front of me. Sadness. Okay, so this next tier list is going to be really quick because I've already gone over the characters somewhat, but this is my subjective tier list. So this is based on me and what I feel, especially if you have lower RNG, but really just me. So my subjective tier list is not going to be, too fancy. It's going to be that. Haru is definitely an A tier. Above Ayaka. Toshiaki is above Aiko. That's the main difference here. I think actually Mizuki's above. It's subjective. This is subjective. So, Yoji. Mimi's still above there. Moriko's still definitely above here. In fact, no, this. But I still rather play Aika than Mimi. Miku is probably, down here, above Koji. Although that's partially my likes coming into factor, but Juri and A, Yumiko still below, I think even here. Kana actually a bit higher in my opinion, subjectively, I feel. And then actually, you know what? Yeah, just put these all the way down here. So, and in case we forgot, these are that's that, and these are this. Well, kind of, I won't fill in too much because you should be kind of be able to tell what's happening. But yeah, this is my subjective tier list, and I'll go over it briefly for about like 10-15 minutes at most. So the reason why Toshiaki is above is because with my with my RNG, some people like to complain that Toshiaki fails a lot of events. He does, but this subjective tier list kind of breaks the guidelines a little bit, in that I don't really experience troubles with frostbite and whatnot. It is still bad, but I'd rather still play Toshiaki than Aiko, because I have a lot more Doom in my control. Whereas I have trouble with a lot more Doom. Or Reason, but I have problem with Reasons with all of characters, so yeah. Aiko's Aiko, plush toy. If nothing else, Aiko's tied with Toshiaki. Haru saves a lot of Doom, but you need to buy cigarettes. Yes, but he doesn't need to buy a weapon either, so you benefit from a lot of perks. Moriko, old shotgun, not really much to say here. Aika, I just can't get Blood Mania for the life of me. So basically, in another way, you could also say subjective tier list, aka when your RNG is a lot worse, like I said earlier. So you don't get Blood Mania, you re-roll History Club 5 to 10 times, then you have suddenly 25-30% Doom, even with Doom FG later on. Mimi, though, still under Aika, even though all perks run, Mimi is above. Because, if I get an all-perk run on a vacuum, a quick play, Harbinger runs, Aika's this. I mean, really, Aika should be here, but Aika's kind of hovering, still in S tier, lower win rate. Then Mizuki, I like Ally Attack. Ally Attack has worked out well for me most of the time, but not too much, so A tier. Kana, Kana's Kana. I feel a lot more successful as Kana, but that's probably because, again, I'm more familiar with the events. Not too much familiar. Anyway, I think the average, anyone who's been with the whole World of Horror remembers more events than I do. Miku kind of below Kana, because Kana, they don't have a lot of perks and no adrenaline. Again, not dying to Reason, which is what I have trouble with, helps out with not dying as opposed to Miku. While Miku has Doomed already and adrenaline, better than Koji and the rest of the characters, but meh. Koji, camera, cool. Get to throw things, which I run into Dullness quite a lot. Not as much Burning Man, but Dullness. So it either Reporter's Bag, Fast Hands, or Things, or Deduction. Any of his perks works out well for me. Kyrie is a huge RNG fest. I usually don't get the spells I want. Juri, I think actually above Kyrie in this regard, because I like using the vending machines. So I use the checkbook, 3 or 4 times to get a pack of cigarettes and a weapon. Yashiro, even though I think my win rate's actually higher with the Yashiro than a lot of characters, but I feel like it's still hard for me. I also don't like taking Zeal, but that's probably why my win rate is not as high. And then the 3 down here, same reasons as the objective tier list, where I don't have a lot of fun with Yumiko with 4 strength. I level up, don't get swing and hit, have to reroll 3 or 4 times, die to Doom. Puppet-chan, Hayano, I don't play as much, but just looking at it, I know I'm going to hate it, because if I hate Yumiko, playing as Yumiko, the stats being lower for Puppet-chan, or not having any good perks at all, at least Yumiko has swing and hit. Pain. Again, Predestined, Unrelenting, not bad, but you want something for combat, and at least Yumiko has something for combat. Even if it is Swift Maneuver, but I don't use that either, so that's why D tier. Anywho. Yeah, was this saying greater than? It should be less than. Am I going crazy here? Let me check really quickly. Yeah, I was going crazy here. So less than equal, or sorry, equal, and then that. But yeah, just to complete that out, it's subjective tier list. I should have zoomed in a bit here, but subjective tier list. Again, I don't think every character is bad, but in fact, these 3 could probably be up here, C or B tier. But subjectively, I don't experience a lot of success with Yumiko, and then I haven't played these 2 enough. Really, I should make a waiting tier, but if I had to guess, they'd be D tier as well. Actually, no, this was right. That was right. I'm going crazy here. Yeah, I'm going absolutely crazy here. But then this is greater than. Anywho. So on to custom characters. If you didn't know, there are a few custom characters. Hold on, let me just check. Yeah, 120%. So I made 9 characters so far. I wanted to make more. In fact, someone made Asterion from Baldur's Gate. I actually wanted to make Asterion at some point, but they did it first. So yeah, we have our 9 characters. For those who don't know, those characters are Elster, Columbo, Elise from Little Goody Two Shoes, Andy Lele from The Coffin of, Princess, Master Shake, Aqua Teen Unga first, Emiko from Irma, and Kotoko from Milgram. If you don't know, look them up, but for World of Horror, we're looking mainly at the gameplay aspects, and we're also applying the same guidelines. So, in a vacuum of runs, just really quickly in a minute, if I have to rate everyone, Elster, Columbo, probably Elise, Andrew up here as well. I feel like Princess is up here as well. I can't remember, but I'm just gonna be safe and put an A down here. Actually, no, down bottom of S. Bottom of S. You also still S, A, and bottom of S, funny enough. Hey, as it turns out, I mean, again, assuming no human errors and whatnot, and yeah, that's kind of the thing. I think some of them still go down to A, and let me actually just update this here. And again, for those who don't know these characters or have never played these characters, I'll explain briefly basically their mechanics and whatnot, because some of them have certain status effects and spells that you can't normally... You won't normally see with a base character, but you can give, or you normally just don't see at all, really. But we'll go over it. And I might even have to pull up the Ito files here and there, but it doesn't really require a lot, especially if you're not going to plan to play the characters, so hey. So let's go from left to right and kind of adjust based on that. So Elster, hey Elster, 7 strength, 7 dexterity, 7 knowledge, or sorry, perception and knowledge, 3 charisma, and I think like 3 luck, but stats being as great as they are and strength being as important as it is, the negatives is that Elster has, well, one, they have she has a perk pack that doesn't really help her at all, because it is, I think, military, or no, close quarters, which is CQC training, and something else. I need to pull up the Ito file. Gosh dang it, me. Well, yeah, we'll say it. But even just the stats alone provide themselves to a lot of success on a Harbinger run compared to other characters. So while Elster has 2 stacks of Mind Wipe, which is essentially just 6 reason damage, really, on a Harbinger run, you might not want to take that, but funny enough, on an Azal run, can provide a slight bonus depending. But let's see here. Let me just make sure. So, yeah, close quarters. Oh, I don't know why I'm looking at the wrong thing. So, close quarters grants you deft handling and CQC training, which are both firearm perks, but obviously Elster doesn't have a firearm. Unless you take, maybe, you do a weird little play, which does lend itself to some interesting capabilities like sports rifle, but I haven't really tested that out, and normally you're just going to pick up another weapon anyway, so overall a negative to have that, but let me just make sure I'm looking at the right thing. Yeah, and then inner strength. So inner strength, extra HP on top of higher stats means, yeah, pretty good, pretty comfortable, like 90% win rate, 95 to 99% win rate. So I feel that's pretty comfortable. Nothing else really after that, aside from talking about certain old story, backstory combinations. Funny enough, Commoner helps out Elster, because now you don't have to worry about losing 6th reason, but that's not a small positive. It's still a positive, though. And then there are other things like, 7th Curse, you can immediately buy a weapon. You don't need to spend Doom. Elster's main weakness is, well, lack of Doom management, but indirectly through higher stats, you'll save a bit on Doom as well. So, hey. As for Columbo, if not above Elster, could be subjective, then below. For the reason that Columbo starts off with 2 good perks, which are Fast Learner and Deduction. So while you might be going, well, he has low strength and dexterity, I mean, you're going to get hit a lot because he can't really brace. That's not so bad because Fast Learner allows him to level up more. Overall, it's still kind of a negative overall, but then you also have Deduction immediately, which Koji dreams he had. But with Deduction, you are essentially at least leveling up 1 or 2 times more, based on usually in an average run, you'll end up with about 50-ish experience at the end of your run, extra over whatever level you are on, which results in, extra deduction, meaning depending on how you like to play with your experience, you can get 2 extra levels or it's guaranteed 1 extra level. Usually 2 though, in my experience. And then yeah, the stat spread doesn't look great. It's 2 strength, 2 dexterity, 9 perception, 5 charisma, 9 knowledge on Harbinger with 6 luck. But the higher perception and knowledge and the perception being abnormally high lends itself to Army Knife, which is a very, very good weapon. If you consider the Monkey Wrench a very powerful weapon, Army Knife fits that same vein, and even if it might be a little worse, having a legal den means that you can get a hospital pass for Ward. It's a good option select store. And so at this point, you might also be wondering, well, Jordan, doesn't Columbo just immediately die to frostbite or die during Zectast? Again, you would figure that, but from my experience, not as much, because Columbo gets so much experience, you're leveling up fast enough for Zectast not to doom you out. Now, there are bad moments, which is why, maybe Columbo is lower down on the list, but from my experience, at the bare minimum, Zectast isn't as much of a problem. But that being said, it is still a problem. It's just not as bad as it seems. Also, yes, gets destroyed in commoner backstory, but not the worst thing in the world as well. And then, yeah, being subject to frostbite to flashbacks is not as great either. But overall, stronger perks too, because I think has pushing yourself and smooth talk. Pushing yourself, as I said, pushing yourself? Am I going crazy here? Am I saying the wrong one? I am. Yeah. Pushing yourself is the other one, where it's survival instinct and winging it. So winging it provides you extra experience, and survival instinct helps you deal with strength and dexterity checks if you happen to be that low. Usually not, but if you take winging it and you do a knowledge perception check, you're usually getting a lot more experience. And then you have the smooth talker, which is, I think, improvise and fame, right? Let me just make sure. Yeah. So fame, if you get allies, pretty good with on top of the army knife or knowledge weapon you may be using. And then improvise, if you throw items, that's already good too. It's not the greatest thing, but it's another net positive. It's not bad to get if there's nothing else. But if you get quick thinking, then you're good. Quick thinking and a point of strength gets you out of a lot of Zectast shenanigans, sorry. And then a lot of the things you think may be bad are actually quite not as bad as Columbo. And by extension, Elser, because Elser has a bunch of high stats as well. Anyway, moving on to Elise. Elise has juries on the run. So while you can't track aura progress, assuming no human errors, you can track it on your own. And then having 7 strength, 6 dexterity is pretty good. The other stats are quite low, but being able to level up a lot faster helps out. And funny enough, on Ill-Fated, if you're using a custom character with the on-the-run status effect, but you have the Ill-Fated backstory, you level up twice because your experience to level up becomes 50, but you still get 133 experience. Because I guess what the game does is it looks for jury, and it's like, oh, I'll only give jury 66 experience on the Ill-Fated backstory. But for custom characters with on the run, they get 133, so you get to level up twice immediately. And for Elise, this can result in very, very good things. I forgot what perk packs, but we'll talk about the bonuses. I think, hold on, is there anything? No, I'm going crazy. Elise's bonuses, she starts with on the run, and then the other one is paranoia. That's pretty bad, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And then her perk packs are escape artist and pushing yourself, so running shoes and stealth, which aren't bad if you synergize them, but not the greatest either, but it's like mediocre around. And then pushing yourself is, like I said, winging it and survival instinct, which are also not bad. They're still kind of mediocre in the grand scheme of things, but they're still things that you would pick up, in my opinion, at least. And then having 7 strength lends itself to a lot of strength weapon positives. So yeah, maybe I switch it up. Well, we'll see when we get into Andrew here. Andrew, on the other hand, so I designed Andrew with, again, high. Maybe I'm just too scared to give characters less than like 4 strength, which doesn't seem to be true. Well, yeah, Columbo's really the only one less than 4 strength, but for good reason. As opposed to Andrew, 7 strength, 7 dexterity, 6 perception, 3 knowledge, 4 charisma, and I think he starts off with hard knock immediately. Because that's the one, yeah, that's not in a perk pack. So, yeah, hard knock, and he gets a pack of cigarettes, so pretty much kind of a Haru start. But instead of Haru's perks, he gets the Skilled Butcher and Meat Time perk packs, which are Meat Time, good for recovery. Not amazing, but it's okay, because if you like Hot Bath as Aiko, you'll benefit from it. Self-Therapy, kind of a little bit of a dead perk, but when you have the series, if you have the other perk packs for the... No, Skilled Butcher. Skilled Butcher? Skilled Butcher? I think it's Skilled Butcher. Why am I going crazy? Yeah, Skilled Butcher, sorry. Skilled Butcher, fresh meat, gain a mysterious meat for completing a mystery. It can be any kind of... I think it can be a few categories, but normally it's going to be good for you. And then Sharpening Stone, if you get a, sharp type weapon, the extra point of damage will normally help out. And assuming no human errors, you can get quite good things, even if it's just the army knife, even though Andrew has lower perception overall. If you use Hard Knock and take Nicotine Rush, it becomes a lot better, which is why probably better. Actually, yeah, probably put him above Elise here. So about an 85, 83% win rate. As we move down to the princess, who has 4 strength, 5 dexterity, 7 perception, 5 knowledge, 6 charisma. Her bonuses and perk packs will go over, but also 6 luck on princess. Some characters have lower luck, but luck is normally a non-issue. It does have an effect, but hey. So the princess starts with winging it. So immediately, yeah, stat checks become harder, but you get more experience overall. May or may not help, but kind of an average thing to have. Not completely negative, not completely positive. And then Doomed Already, status effect, very powerful, assuming you're failing a lot. So even if you fail winging it checks, these two bonuses synergize together. So you fail a winging it check, you get 1 reason back. You succeed a winging it check, you get extra experience. And then she has the Anxious Athlete perk pack, which all you really care about is Fast Swimmer. And then Smooth Talker, again, Improvised Fame, nice to have. Not gonna be still situational, but nice to have. What's the other Anxious Athlete perk? Fast Hands. So you literally have Fast Hands Improvise if you can set that up, but normally you don't. So not the greatest, but also stats are not terribly bad. But once you get Fast Swimmer, yeah, Army Knife, almost any weapon, knowledge weapons, you take your pick. Still, probably maybe actually bottom. Might still even be below Ashley, but we'll talk about Ashley first. Then I'll make my judgment. So Ashley, 5 strength, 5 dexterity, 4 perception, 4 knowledge, 7 charisma. So can run ally attack. Normally you're not doing that yet though, because I think the bonuses here are a bit different. So if Ashley had charisma perks for ally attack, yeah, but normally you're not doing. You can still pick up students at the seaside. That's actually a bigger positive than you may think, but it's not significant. But she starts off with the Meat Cleaver, or immediately starts off with a weapon. Not the greatest weapon, which is why bottom of A tier, or lower in A tier, or S tier. Then Long Pig Steak, which, doesn't help her charisma, so that's why if you don't play towards charisma, you eat the Long Pig Steak, you get a little bit of healing. Again, that's a very small positive among many. And then her perk packs are Skilled Butcher, Serial Killer. We've talked about the Skilled Butcher. We'll talk about the Serial. To avoid triggering robots, I'll just call it Serial perk pack. So Doomed Already, as we went over with the Princess, very good perk. And Miku. Anatomy class, extra damage against human enemies. So Butcher and Serial, if you get both Sharpening Stone and the Anatomy class, you get to do a lot of damage. But you have to level up into them. So not the strongest stat start either, but you start with the Meat Cleaver, so you save on a lot of Doom, and I do value that a lot, which is why S tier, if she didn't have the Meat Cleaver, probably actually worst character of the custom characters here. But we'll move on. Yeah, so with that said, start off with it, but I think the Princess has better potential over the Meat Cleaver, which if the Meat Cleaver were instead, say, the old shotgun, but then I have to add bullets. Yeah. Probably another sharp one, maybe the steak knife. But still, even that though would not. I don't think that would elevate. No, it could. But unfortunately, you get the Meat Cleaver instead. So moving on to Kotoko, 6 strength, 6 dexterity. I was trying to remember if there's anything else I needed to say. 5 perception, 5 knowledge, 1 charisma. But she starts off with adrenaline, and she starts off with swing and hit. So basically, you get to prep attack. This is what Yumiko wishes she was. And the only perk pack that Kotoko has is Lone Wolf, but that's actually for the better, as I blow the mic out, because you have On Your Own, which gets you extra stats. And what else did you get? I forgot. Hard Knock. So you can also smoke cigarettes and benefit even more. So basically, a big Kotoko, very, very good for fighting pretty much anything. But 1 charisma, which means you die immediately to hunger. Zektas presents an issue. So definitely bottom of S, but most of the other 75% of your runs at minimum, you're having a great time having adrenaline and swing and hit. So you run any item you want, steak knife, monkey wrench, heavy duty flashlight, army knife, small candle, ritual dagger. You're gonna prep attack, and deal at least 12 damage per turn minimum on almost any enemy, or you could brace and you get a lot. Again, as I mentioned before, having combat capability is a very important part of placing high in a tier list. For custom characters, that works the same way. And then, yeah, you start off with adrenaline, you start off with that. You have On Your Own, which provides a slight boost to events and encounters, and then you have Hard Knock, so eventually if you use your funds for cigarettes, another small boost. So, yeah. Yeah, maybe even above Ashley. Yeah, above Ashley. Probably above... Actually, I might even push it even higher. Because it's so important. Now, yeah, probably up here. Adrenaline swing and hit is very, very powerful. Even if you do prep kick, you get 8 damage guaranteed. So you don't even need a weapon. You don't even need a weapon at all. But you probably still want one. So yeah, somewhere around here. But we'll move on. Hey, Shake! There can only be one. Unfortunately, not, I made this character to be a little bit harder. I didn't want them to be hopeless. But he is fighting an uphill battle, so 5 strength, 6 dexterity, 3 perception, 4 charisma, 4 knowledge, and 6 luck. Starts off with hot bath, so you can rest for a lot more recovery, but unfortunately, yeah, having lower stats overall doesn't lend itself to a lot of good outcomes. And then the perk packs don't have those, but let's talk about the rest of the bonuses. Experimental drug, a very good burst of recovery, cost max stamina question mark, or is it reason? Either way, you get a lot of 1 HP, but you lose max of the other. Not too bad. Basically a good source of recovery, but it's still a small positive in a sea of Harbinger pain. And then, old gods forbid you have a Goizel run, so Hot Bath does a little worse. And then his perk packs are Petty Thief and Obsessive Shopper. So as I mentioned before, you're not normally shopping in the middle of a run, unless you're using cigarettes, so subjectively better for me. For most players, though, Objective Shopper probably not going to do as much for you. And then Petty Thief is looting and pickpocketing, which, again, normally lend itself to... pickpocketing items is like, meh. Worse than meh. And then looting, yeah, fun, so... Yeah, you don't have to worry about getting pickpocketed as much, but still, it's not great. So, not much else to say there. But still has relatively okay stats, it's just not great. Actually, I might rank him lower. Yeah, probably maybe below Emiko. But we'll move into Emiko first. Probably 70% win rate, could be in B. I'm going to say low A. And then into the last character, Emiko. So Emiko has 2 spells that you will never see in game unless you give it to a custom character. Those spells are Binding Agony and Mend. Mend trades, I think it's 2 reason for 1 stamina. Am I going crazy here? I feel like it's the other way around. Let me make sure. So, yeah, let me make sure of that. Now, it does have some wonky effects because things that are not included in the game are not meant to be used. So there are some wonky things. I think, for example, the most straightforward one is the Stone Statues event. Mend and or Binding Agony cause some jank to happen, but we'll go over the bonuses here. So 2 spells that you don't get normally. Mend is 2 stamina to gain 1 reason, which in a game where you're losing more reason and doom usually than stamina, unless your run just says a lot of stamina damage, sure. Number-wise, you're going negative, but if you need the reason, you need the reason, right? And it's nice to have. If nothing else, it's extra reason to recover, like Binding Agony, which you're probably going to use less than Mend, unless you're in a very specific Eldritch encounter, but with base events and mysteries, you're probably never using this, aside from a few all encounters. But thankfully, there's no other requirement other than the 3 reason cost. It's not like it needs to be an Eldritch enemy. So, but it really does depend. And normally in World of Horror, you want to defeat enemies quickly. You're not sitting in an encounter for probably about 4 or 5 turns is when you start to benefit off Binding Agony. Yeah. 4 or 5 turns, but you don't want to be in an encounter for that long. So, the effect of Binding Agony, 3 reason cost, the enemy's damage is lowered by 1. And I think there may be bugs here or there, but assuming if it would ever work as intended, it is still situational. So, And then we'll go over the stats really quickly here. 4 strength, 5 dexterity, 9 perception, 3 charisma, 5 knowledge, 6 luck. Yeah, or 5 luck, 6 luck. I can't remember which luck is affected. Why do I remember this? I'm going crazy. Hey, the stream's ending soon. But yeah, 10 perception or 9 perception on Harbinger means immediate army knife plays. So you can set a legal den, which is already good for ward, if you have ward. And then every other thing, yeah, basically closer to a normal character here, aside from 10 perception, because charisma being at 3 means that you only need to increase strength, and you only need to make up 3 stat points for Zektas, which is not bad compared to the other custom characters on this tier list. Army Knife is also a very good weapon if you like the Monkey Wrench for perception, and yeah, not much else to say there. Definitely A tier. I don't know if it's going to be S because there's still a lot that you need to get. But let's go into the perks really quickly. Witch's Child Magic Caster. These are the 2 perk packs you give to a very magical based custom character. So just to reiterate what these are, Witch's Child gives you second sight in occult signs. Experience bonus for casting spells if you decide to cast spells. Situational. Second sight, a bit more consistent. Then there is the thingamajiggy. Where is it? Help! Magic Caster. Ghost Connection. Get a random spell after every mystery, and Arcane Grasp, plus 2 additional spell slots. Pretty much a dead perk, but Ghost Connection's a pretty fun RNG perk. Pretty not consistent, but meh, okay to have at minimum. So with those perk packs, if I just gave Emiko like the Anxious Athlete perk pack, immediately S tier, but because of that, and because it's kind of all meh, just like how I ranked Kyrie, working with magic at times is very RNG based, but it can be very good. When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's meh. So yeah, that's the thing. So here, hey, quick little tier list for the custom characters I've made. I'll probably concentrate on one on Saturday-ish, maybe, but we'll see what I actually decide to do on Saturday. It's either going to be more custom characters or old gods or backstories, so we'll see about that. But yeah, without further ado, if I were to rewind back, so this is the objective tier list we were actually focusing on during the stream here. If nothing else, this can exist as a video. I'll probably try to do a little future Jordan magic afterward, but if nothing else, this is how it exists. So anyone watching right now, again, future Jordan probably needs to put a timestamp here. The details here are kind of... The only other thing to add is that the win rates here are still pretty much high for them. Yumiko's probably like 68%. Puppet Chen and Hayano are probably 65 minimum. And the reason for this is because in the game in general, your character does apply a huge part. That's why there's such a huge spread here, but no one's really at C or D. Like, you have a less than or equal to 60% or lower to succeed a run based on a vacuum of quick play Harbinger runs with random settings and all the guidelines. I'll put that back on screen really quickly here as well, just in case if you want to pause and look at it. Let me just do this because OBS doesn't want to do a thing. But yeah, these are the guidelines we were making the tier list based off of. It'll be here for another 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, and then I'll switch back to the tier list so we can end on that. But yeah, try to control things as much as possible. This doesn't account for endless. This doesn't account for custom mysteries or custom mysteries, events, linked events, whatnot. Only just the base game in 1.01. And this tier list will change if more updates vastly change the game, even just to a small degree. You can see some characters because I think the third point that I haven't mentioned yet is little even increases in 1 HP, 1 strength, 1 stat point, 1 stamina, 1 reason here and there, 1 doom can vastly, but usually somewhat change the balance of the game in general, and therefore also change a tier list that anyone would make. For example, before Kyrie's bag, I think if Kyrie still had... Kyrie's bag was nerfed so that it cost 1 doom to reroll spells, but if it didn't, and like I said, I'm allowing for infinites and pseudo-infinites, she would definitely be above S tier, because I know there are more than a few infinite setups, but without them, and with the bag nerfed as it is, still top of A, because I'm sure you can set up some good infinites here. But yeah, these are also very fluctuant, so like plus or minus 5 to 7% on win rate. So some characters can be an S or mostly higher. So really this is what we're looking at in terms of the, if I were to be more lenient, but just for the sake of argument, like being more average case, I think this is a more accurate tier list. So as mentioned, top 3 characters in order of first to third: Aiko, Ayaka, and Toshiaki. Bottom 3, now that I've decided,
Again, more objectively, not subjectively, Miku, Juri, Yumiko. But to extend that even further, like Yumiko, Puppet-Chen, Hayano. And yeah, Miku has adrenaline, but I feel like more people experience success with Kana and Yashiro, but this is also assuming not a lot of human errors, so that's why Kana actually would be a lot lower if we were looking at the average player, but this is assuming you know more about World of Horror. But yeah, nothing much else to say. If you have anything to say, you have about a minute or two to kind of address it. If you want to persuade me otherwise on the tier list, feel free to do that as well. Otherwise, yeah, you can reach me on Discord for more informal matters or for formal matters, business matters. I have a business email that you can see through my channel. If you want to send me things about, doing things on channel, more business-like, please don't send, private communications through there. Just if you want me to do, if you want me to play a game, whether you're a fan or otherwise, if you want me to do certain things on the channel, if you want things to be private, obviously, email is probably a bit more secure. I've had some people using my email as well, but otherwise, Discord is not bad to reach out for if you just want to say, if you want a meme or something, yeah. Through the World of Horror Discord, you'll find me. You'll find me on a lot of other servers too, usually indie games. But as I work on, projects in real life, I am very busy during this week and the next week because I'm doing my thing. But yeah, just to kind of reiterate, probably a future Jordan thing. Just a little last overview here. This is the objective tier list. This is the subjective tier list. So based on me and my RNG or lower RNG in general. And then this is a custom character tier list based on characters I've made. I might want to do another one based on custom characters in general. Like, there are a lot of them. But we'll go over the ones that are available for not just available. And if they're used for 1.01. I haven't played a lot of them to some degree. Obviously, I've played my own characters. That's why I'm comfortable making my own tier list on my own characters. But otherwise, I mean, feel free. Hey, Jay or Dan MML or Jordan has finally made a tier list for World of Horror. But it does have some very specific guidelines. Being 1.01, Harbinger quick play settings, randomize a bunch of things, no rerolls and mysteries, so on and so forth. No human error. Unlike me, who forgets a second counter check. But yeah, I won't take up much more of your time. If you're watching now or in the future, I'd just like to thank you for watching. Let me do that in chat. And I will see you when I see you again. One last time, if you want to reach out and suggest things, videos, streams that I want to do, I do have some things planned for next week. I think the next few days the videos are going to be based on Hayano and Puppet-Chen, now that I'm just interested, and more Yumiko and or commoner backstories, but we'll see what happens. The end of October is definitely going to be held up because I'm doing a series based on, hey, commoner backstory, I might as well say it. But yeah, without further ado, take up much more of your time. I won't take up much more of your time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye! Jordan, end the stream, Jordan. You're looking at OBS, you're looking at YouTube, you're looking at the YouTube studio.